This one-day summit brings together business leaders and key players working on electric vehicles, energy, information technology, and charging infrastructure to explore how we advance full battery electric e-mobility. The summit is a high-level business forum based on the dual themes of business engagement and thought leadership from the most senior, influential, and informed people in the sector. At this summit, we have gathered together the leading experts and visionaries in the field of electric vehicles and manufacturing. We have come together to share ideas, collaborate, and explore new and innovative ways to further the growth of electric vehicle industry. Before we begin the event, I request everyone to keep their mobile in the silent mode. Can I request Dr. L. Ravindran, President of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, sir, please, if you can join us on the dais. Dr. Devarajan, Senior Vice President of BCIC. I also request Mr. Vineet Verma, Vice President, BCIC. It's our pleasure to have Mr. Gnanendra Kumar, Additional Commissioner of Transport, Government of Karnataka, today with us as a chief guest, so please. Our guest of honor for today, Mr. Kamal Bali, doesn't need an introduction. President and Chairman of Volvo India. Sir, please. BCIC is on its journey of growth for the last 46 years, and as the country progresses, BCIC has always been a front runner to work on various opportunities, issues and initiatives which brings an impact to Karnataka as a state, nation, and globe at large. To start the event, I request Dr. L. Ravindran, President, BCIC, and Founder, Managing Director, and CEO at Wealthmax Group of Companies for giving the welcome note. Please, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dignitaries seated on the dais, Mr. Gnanendra Kumar, Additional Commissioner, Transport, Government of Karnataka, Mr. Kamal Bali, the CEO and Managing Director of Volvo Group of Companies in India, our past presidents, advisors, management committee members, speakers, the audience, and all the sponsors. There are 8 of them, I remember correctly. They are Mercedes-Benz, TVS Sundaram Motors, NTTF, EDS Technologies, Government of Karnataka, Karnataka Renewable Energy Development Limited, who have made this event successful. This event was conceived in the month of October 2022, and we are toying with the idea that we should have a series of programs starting in the month of October and culminating before March. However, things could not take shape, but all of a sudden there was a new gush of wind, and in the month of February, March, we again started building up this concept, and here we are, and close to about 150 people in attendance. Thank you very much for joining us today. BCIC has always been at the helm of affairs in terms of shaping up a plethora of ideas, and especially new ideas as and when it is conceived. I remember in the year 2016, if I remember correctly, when the demonetization came up, within the first 3 days, we were able to come up with a program on demonetization. Then on and off, as and when the governmental policies have struck a new chord, we have been able to bring to our members the various facts, truth, whatever lies unfolded, and anything else that required to be deliberated upon has been brought to the fore for the members' benefit. Having said that, today's event has been made very successful in my own way of looking at things. Dr. Devarajan requires a special applause. Mr. Karthikeyan, member of the team, Mr. G. Prakash, Mr. Ravindran Sa, and these people have been able to spin this event in a flat 20 odd days. Importantly, one of the gentlemen who stood to the task and represented himself, initiated himself to come to the fore and build this theme into a grand success has been none other than Mr. Shyam Prasad. I'm sure he's present here. He's on the extreme left of mine, and he's a secretary of the Chamber of Commerce. He had his own personal anxieties, a couple of disturbances on the family front, but still he has been able to get this organized. Thank you, Mr. Shyam Prasad. Supporting him has been Mr. Niranjan, Ms. Rupa, Ms. Rajshri, Mr. Leo, and everybody else. Our secretariat is a very efficient one, and they always bring about quality work with ease. The data, as far as I am concerned, I am novice on this subject. I leave it to the experts. But as far as I understand, close to about 1.01 million EV vehicles have been sold in the year 2022. And this is a mammoth threefold increase between 2021 and 22. And I was recently in Nagpur for the G20 meeting. There is a subgroup called C20, and it deliberates upon 14 different working groups. One of them happened to be on renewable energy, then another one on the rivers and sustainability, water management, and more importantly on electric vehicle too. And I'm given to understand that world over electric vehicles are going to hold a special place, and India would possibly counter us, is on a special wicket and would counter a growth of nothing less than about threefold increase in the next 5 years. And that's a good number to begin with. I'm not too sure. I have seen the pie chart, and it doesn't give a great indication of the four-wheelers versus the three-wheelers and two-wheelers. It's at the moment stacked towards the two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Having said this, once again, I welcome each one of you for having made it to this morning's meeting. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful Monday and the week ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindran, for this welcome note. The light of knowledge within ourselves eradicates the darkness of ignorance. We do this now by lighting the lamp. I now request Mr. Gnanendra Kumar, Mr. Kamal Wali, office bearers Dr. Ravindran, Dr. Devarajan, Mr. Vineet, and the manufacturing expert committee members to please join us for the lighting of the lamp.
Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadah. Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadah. Shatru buddhi vinashaya deepajyotir namostute. Deepajyotir namostute. Shubham kurutvam kalyanam arogyam dhanasampadah.
We welcome all the past presidents, members, mentors, committee chairs, co-chairs, the government authorities, and all those who are watching us. Special thanks to our friends from press and media for being the voice of Chamber. This event would not have been possible without our sponsors. Gold sponsor Bescom, NTTF, Mercedes-Benz, TE Connectivity, TVS Sundaram Motors. Silver sponsors EDS Technologies. Associate sponsors Government of Karnataka, KRELDL. Special thanks to BCIC annual sponsors, Bueller, Continental, Fundamax, IAMPL, MTR, SDM IMD, TVS Motors, Wipro, Vishwas Group of Companies, Sona College of Technology, Sona Ayush, and Sona Star. Thank you everyone for supporting BCIC. Before we proceed further, in the interest of time and a power-packed schedule set for this summit, I request all the speakers to keep a tap on the timer kept in front of you to finish their talk in their given assigned time. I now request Dr. Devarajan, Senior Vice President, Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and Senior Vice President at TVS Motors for setting the context of this EV summit. Please, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for all the speakers here. Thanks for the chief guest. Thanks for Kamal Bali. Everyone, thank you very much. This is a very important event for BCIC. like what President did mention, we had started this thought of having the manufacturing summit in the month of October. And there was a shift in many of the ideas which came in. And we thought, which is the most critical in manufacturing sector today? Because it is changing. So we thought it better to have a EV summit and EV series of summit from now onwards. I think there'll be quality, there'll be lean manufacturing, there'll be many areas. In fact, BCIC has got 27 expert committees with us. And each of us can interact together to make a very important event for all of us. So I'm going to mention today about why we are meeting today. I think if you see today, India GDP is growing, and all of us are a part of it. I think all of us are participating in our GDP growth. We are almost among the top 5. Are you not proud of this? Right? So it's a very important event in terms of we are growing. The GDP is growing, our growth also is faster, and we can see this energy coming in. And I saw the energy today morning, early in the morning itself. I'm very, very happy to have students, MSMEs, manufacturers, speakers who are enthusiastic to share. And like what Richard did mention, we're going to have a power pact event today. Since this is growing, what's happening is everything, automobile is growing. Automobile is going to be the life, if you really see. In automobile, manufacturing is the key. So all of us in manufacturing, right? We are supporting manufacturing, IT supporting manufacturing is the key. And definitely in terms of we are manufacturing, producing more, what's happening is the weather in terms of the climate conditions and Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Accord has been signed by India. India is taking the lead. In fact, Ravindran had been to the G20 program. In sustainability is a very key thing. Today, it's going to be sustainability 360 degree. In fact, it is going to be with disruption, but 360 degree. Why? We are the customers, right? All of us are customers, right, of EV, of producers, and we are also polluting. So we need to have a better vehicle. Hence, there is a focus on product, process, community, and environment. So we're going to cover all these things today in our meeting. So if you go a little bit deeper, government is definitely giving a lot of support in terms of the signing the protocol of Paris and Kyoto, definitely driving the BS6 norms. India was the first to start BS6 to BS3 to BS6 in a record time. I think all of us did participate. Thanks for the entire manufacturing community here, Toyota, everyone. I think it's been a tremendous amount of change. EV drive is another big change. SDG goals, I'll just talk about it a little bit more because that's going to be the focus for us. And of course, on logistics, circular economy. What's happening with this? Growth is happening. And hence, we have a growth in terms of manufacturers, SMEs, definitely in the growth, global supply. We can become leader in many of the areas, and we are in the anvil for this growth. So if you really go from sustainability goal, UN also is putting a lot of pressure in terms of how to make it much better for every one of us. So there are something like 17 goals in which, including the poverty eradication, many of these goals, and India is taking a big, big lead. Though we are lagging, but we can take a challenge and make it happen. And all of us as manufacturers have taken an oath that we will going to lead this. And in automobile sector, something like 10 groups are happening, 10 areas we are trying to working on earth-friendly planet, earth-friendly plant, which are manufacturing all our equipments, earth-friendly, especially employee-friendly practices. We can group all these SDG goals among the top 3 and contribution to society. And of course, the governance. So SDG goals linked to our targets to make the environment better is going to be the key. So this is the area in which we are focusing. And today you'll listen to all these areas. Why I'm giving you an overview is definitely you'll have excellent speakers with us, experienced speakers with us, and they're going to share. And we're going to talk about competence development. We're talking about skill development, including the Brigade BCIC Skill Development Council, which we're going to have. They're going to talk about EV, how it will help, and how we're going to train many of our members. So if you really see, product development is happening in terms of EV vehicles, battery, safety on top of all of our mind, and cost. What's going to be the total cost of ownership? You can ask these questions in this meeting today. And lithium-ion cells, the development of a hybrid product. And in processes, many things are happening in lightweighting. And today, that's why we have Fronius to talk about welding, lightweighting, aluminum. You can talk about this charging infrastructure, which is key on top of us. Someone is asking me, will EV take over? What will happen to the infrastructure? What happened to the chargers, charging structures? I think it's going to happen. We're going to talk about this today. And in terms of environment, alternative hydrogen is a very, very key factor today, and we're going to listen more about this. Circular economy is another new learning which you're going to have today. And of course, on community, all of us, solar, getting our own energy in our houses on solar. So we're going to call mobility, but mobility is life. All of us are in area. So we're going to cover all these things today in our meetings, and you can have a lot of interactive sessions with all the members today. And if you really see what's happening in the mobility sector. So this is a common area where we are saying, okay, gasoline will be a challenge. So in terms of disruption, EV is coming into a big way. Hybrid, another area in which challenge is happening. In the next 10 years, you can see how much of growth of other technologies. And that's the reason why we need to be aware today. Because today we are in 2023. In another 5 years from now, the things will be changing to totally different structure in terms of EV, hybrid, hydrogen. You name anything in the world, probably India will be leading. So that's another proud moment for all of us. Then if you really see the development happening in terms of our manufacturers, we are trying to see how to have fuel economy better, how to have range better, how to displace fuels, different fuels. So we can go from IC engines to hybrid to hydrogen, battery vehicle, and so on and so forth. And today, last week, we were discussing about hydrogen. As an IC engine, Toyota developed an excellent vehicle, use hydrogen as an IC engine itself. So another big development. So there's an energy challenge, development of environmental challenge, technology challenge of lightweighting and other areas. And all these things we tried to combine and say, can we do it in a day? So that's the reason why we had a time difference, understanding whether you can cover. But today we're going to give you an overview, giving all the areas of development. And probably we'll have a series of meetings. And BCIC, we are leaders in making it happen from the beginning. Whether it is a $1 trillion economy in Karnataka, we took lead in it. And talking about the finance businesses, we are taking lead in the budgeting. And technology, we'll take lead further. So another thing which is most crucial for all of us is hydrogen. So we're talking about green hydrogen today. Probably our speaker will talk about more about this hydrogen in many of these areas, talking about gray hydrogen and in terms of the blue hydrogen. But this is the area where we feel India can take lead. So another big activity for all of us to understand, make note of it, talk about this during our discussion. Another major thing which we want to share is on the circular economy. We want to ensure from the beginning of the design to the process, to the logistics, to metal handling, to the usage of these products, and of course recycling, including battery. There are a lot of technologies happening, including the cell recycling and getting back the elements of lithium ion back into the manufacturers. And a lot of regulations is coming. Something like 20% we need to give back to the manufacturer of the cells. So this circular economy will be the key factor for us. And please keep it in mind when we have discussion today, and the speakers will talk about it in more and more. So if you really see, we're all working in terms of range. Finally, we have to be in business. And to be in business, everyone is asking how much range can you give? And can you give 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers range? That's a major thing. Charging infrastructure, top of our mind. And we're going to have a discussion on charging infrastructure. Hybridization, what is total cost of ownership? And what we're going to have the vehicle, that's going to be the key. Research, a lot of trials are happening, and the team will share some of the developments happening. And PLI schemes, new technology coming in, new investments, new challenges for all the students here to get internship in many of the companies, interaction with many of our areas. It's a challenge we're going to have, and definitely SME support. Long term, definitely on hydrogen, major support in the green arena in terms of solar energy, in terms of the India has a chance to become a global lead in terms of the hydrogen manufacturing itself. And I was thinking, what are the 3 areas, 3 E's we're going to work on? Definitely envisionment in terms of challenges, vision of every company, energy and environment. That's the 3 E's. And what about the innovation? It should be assured innovation in terms of affordable, definitely. Affordable, scalable, sustainable in terms of recycling, circular economy, universality, because India is exporting something like, even TVS Motor, we export to something like 85 countries. And our market share of exports are increasing from 35% to 45%, it increases more. And definitely on rapidity, how quickly it can be developed. And excellent procedures and in terms of the distinctive, what you're going to have. So I feel these are the focus areas. We're going to discuss these activities under the 3 tracks or 4 tracks. One is on the challenges, opportunity you're going to face, then design and development, which are all key in terms of all of us, manufacturing technology, and the skill development. So my time is up. I think these are the series of activities, and I really thank you very much for participating, and thank you for all the speakers for making it happen. And let's make this EV and Manufacturing Summit a regular event, probably once in half a year or once in a quarter, so that the development is happening and we will see progress. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Devarajan, for highlighting the topics which will be covered today by our distinguished speakers. As mentioned, the summit is being designed in 4 different tracks. Here we start the track 1, which will comprise of electric vehicle, challenge, opportunity, growth, and policies. Today we have Mr. Gnanendra Kumar, Additional Commissioner of Transport. Additional Commissioner of Transport and Environment and E-Governance. He is also the Additional Commissioner in the field of road safety. So can I request you to share your thoughts for today?
A very good morning to everybody. Respected the President, Vice President, and Jairaj sir, and all the stakeholders of this summit. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to be a part of this EV summit. Actually, my Transport Commissioner, Mr. Siddaramappa, is supposed to be here, but he is unwell today. I am just representing on behalf of our Transport Commissioner. I am restricting my talks to only a few words, few lines, because of the ensuing elections. And the Model Code of Conduct has been come into effect since 10 days. So with regard to this EV summit, I just find out the EV summit, which is for challenge, opportunity, and growth. As we are all well aware of, the 20th century is an era of IC engines, that is internal combustion engines, but 21st century is an era of electric vehicle. What is this change of phase? The change of phase, as we are all aware, it is because of the global warming and the climate change. We are all felt about it. From past 20 years, we are feeling and we are felt about it, about the natural disaster. Because of this natural disaster, because of this global warming and climate change, changing the climate change. So we are changing the phase that from IC engines to electric vehicles. As per the study, it is revealed that about 40% of this pollution, that is an environmental pollution, it is because of the motor vehicles. So there is an unabated increase of the motor vehicles. So because of that, the pollution is reaching up to 40%. Rest of the pollution is because of so many other reasons, because of the dust or industrial pollution and much more other pollutions caused by other areas. So in this, the automobile sector, which is a major contributors of this environmental pollution, and because of this, there is a trend for increase of these electric vehicles. As per our study, as per our statistics, there is a drastic improvement in the registration of the motor vehicles. So now at present, 1,93,000 of electric vehicles which has been introduced. Majority of these vehicles are in Bangalore only. Only few percentage of the vehicles is in the rest of Karnataka. So this transition of this energy, that is from the AC engines to electric vehicles, it is because of innumerable number of factors. The first and the foremost factor, as we are knowing, the fossil fuel is depleting. So IC engines are all fossil fuel based, so it is a depleting. And another is the cost is very high. And if we compare with that electric vehicles in this EV segment, that cost is, the fuel cost is also low. And now with this recent innovation, recent initiatives, recent trend that vehicles which are maintenance free, only thing is, what I heard, it is only in the initial cost is very high, but the maintenance is very low and it is pollution free. both in terms of environmental pollution and even in terms of noise pollution. Also, both the pollutions are, zero. I can say zero. So, Government of India with a different initiative, I think it was started in the year 2015 with a policy called Karnataka, in India, that in the year 2015, the NEMM, that is National Electric Mobility Mission, which was started in the year 2015. Under this NEM, the two schemes was introduced, that is one called FAME 1 and FAME 2. I think most of them, all industrialists, they are much aware of this FAME 1 and FAME 2. Lot of initiatives has been given. FAME 1 was started in the year 2019 and FAME 2 was started in the year 2021, providing lot of subsidies for promoting this electric vehicle manufacturing and selling and manufacturing. So under this, I think in Karnataka, particularly in Bangalore, I think BMTC is a very good beneficiary of using this FAME 1 and FAME 2 policy. So even for reducing the pollution and all, that one is the manufacturing and registration of these electric vehicles. Another is, the most important is, what is the innovation, what is the initiatives, what the Karnataka government is giving, what the government of India is giving, that is of more important. So that definitely there will be a promotional policy, and because of this promotion policy, definitely there will be a more and more manufacturing sector, manufacturer, they will come for manufacturing with new innovations and new technologies. Karnataka government, based on this National Electric Mobility Mission, introduced Karnataka Electric Vehicles Energy Storage Policy in the year 2017. In that, there is a lot of promotional initiatives was given by the Karnataka government, and more particularly from the transport department, we are giving 100% tax-free, 100% fees is also exempted, and more important, particularly in the transport vehicle segment, so any transport vehicle which wanted to fly in anywhere in the state, they must have a permit. But here in the electric vehicle segment, there is no permit also. They can freely move anywhere without any kind of hindrance for obtaining the permit. So completely all tax-free, fees-free, and then permit exempted. So this is all what actually the promotional initiatives was given by the government for promoting this electric vehicle registration of motor vehicles. And there is a very good change in the phase from almost, I can say, in the last post-COVID, there is a drastic improvement of around 5% of registration of electric vehicles in the EV segment. So I restrict myself because of this elections. I cannot tell much about what are all the initiatives which was created during this time. So with these few words, I thanks for all the organizers providing an opportunity to speak about few lines about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gnanendra, for being here. Can I request Dr. L. Ravindran and Mr. Jairaj, sir, to please hand over a memento to Mr. Gnanendra?
Thank you very much.
Remove it. Moving forward, we have amongst us Mr. Kamal Bali, who doesn't need any introduction. However, as part of the proceedings, let me take you through his profile. Kamal has been spearheading top global and Indian brands as president and CEO for 2 decades. And since 2014, he is the president and managing director of Volvo Group India, headquartered in Bangalore. A distinguished alumnus of Indian Institute of Technology, Kamal has an illustrious career spanning 4 decades, predominantly in the automotive and engineering industry. In December 2019, Kamal was knighted and awarded one of Sweden's highest honor in the Royal Order of the Polar Star, commanded by their Majesties the King and Queen of Sweden, for his untiring support to the Swedish commerce and industry in India. He is also the recipient of the prestigious 2019 McInnes Lifetime Achievement Award by the Times Group. Can I request Mr. Kamal for a special address on the emerging trends and imperatives for the future success?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Richa, for that very generous introduction. Mr. Gnanendra, that was a very nice presentation. I know, despite the limitations, you said quite a lot. Thank you very much for that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Presidium of BCIC, led by Dr. Ravindran, Mr. Devarajan, Mr. Verma, past presidents of BCIC, respected Shri Jairaj ji, friends from industry, academia, media. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and thank you again to the BCIC management for inviting me to this very, very important and compelling topic which we are all faced with. Friends, our world is undergoing a profound transformation, something not witnessed in generations. And this is going to have a huge impact on way we live our lives, or we do our business, or relate with one another, wherever we are, whoever we are. Indeed, this is also one of the most exciting, disruptive, and eventful times of industry. So it is in this connection, what I have chosen to do this morning is to really talk about some of the high-level mega trends and the imperatives for success to be able to look at this. So I'm going to make 10 short points in the beginning upfront. Point number 1, we are at the crossroads of change and paradoxes. Why I say so? We have impending challenges on one end, which includes climate change, congested cities, inequitable global growth. The poor are getting poor, the rich are getting richer. Resource scarcity. This is one set of challenges across the world. And at the same time, we are presented with some excellent opportunities thanks to technologies and digital transformation which is happening. So I think, so it's a very paradoxical situation. Large number of challenges, equal number of opportunities. I think that's the first takeaway for me. The second, it is now abundantly accepted, especially after COVID, that we need to operate within the boundaries of our planet. Just about, imagine about 6 years back, only 3% of the total emissions were committed by countries to become net zero. Today, 78% emissions are committed by countries. Likewise, 6 years ago, only 300 odd companies had committed to science-based targets. Today, more than 3,000 companies have committed globally on net zero science-based targets. So I think that's another shift which is happening big time. The third point I want to make is, please let's not fool ourselves. This transition of energy is going to be complex. It's going to be daunting. It's going to be costly. It's because why? Let me look at India itself. India is going to go from 3.5 trillion economy to 30 trillion economy by the time we turn 100. Imagine if it is 8 to 9 times growth. Imagine the amount of additional mobility you need. The need for mobility is going to grow tremendously. And how do we therefore provide that mobility while decoupling the negatives of this? We can't have more fossil fuel into the environment. We'll be killing each other. So I think that's the fourth point third point I wanted to make. The fourth point I want to make is sustainability is much more than environment. And I think this is a mistake which we always make. Whenever we talk of sustainability, we get stuck to the very important point of environment alone. Sustainability is not just environment. Environment is one part of sustainability. Sustainability means that whatever you do has to be economically viable, which means more output for less input. So economically viable, better productivity, that is sustainability. Number 2, whatever you do has to be socially inclusive. That's also sustainability. You can't ignore one section of society. You can't ignore women who are only playing 25% role in the whole economic cycle in India. You can't become a superpower or top 3 in the world with only 20% of the women playing the game. 50%, half 50%, both genders have to contribute to this. So sustainability is everything. being diverse, being inclusive, being environmentally friendly, being ethically moral. So all those 4 boxes have to be ticked if we really want to talk about sustainability. The 5th point I wanted to make was, how do we realize full human potential? I think this is something very, very good, important, because to be able to transition to new technologies, to new ways of working, you will need more skills, more human power, more realization of human potential, and therefore upskilling, education, and well-being of people is going to be very important. We, all of us, whether it is industry or otherwise, we will have to get more and more people-centric. So I think that's the 5th thing which I believe is going to be important. The 6th thing I believe is role of leadership. As we move forward and build new ecosystems and navigate various pathways, we need to exercise choices. It's not easy sitting at the top today, because leaders will have to make choices, very, very expensive choices. Do you go hydrogen way? Do you go hydrogen fuel cells? Do you go lithium ion? Or do you go use IC engines with different fuels? All of that. And each one is billions and billions of dollars of investment and 5 to 6 years of time frame. So ladies and gentlemen, what choices you make today is going to decide your future day after tomorrow. So it's not easy. So therefore, leaders have to be not know-it-all kind of people. Leaders will have to be learners. You will have to move to leadership, which is a learning leadership, which is also very importantly collaborative, caring, inclusive, inspiring, agile, very important, agile and visionary. So I think that's a major shift coming in leadership as well. The 7th point which I wanted to make was that digitalization, automation, and pathways to net zero are going to define the future of mobility. These 3 aspects, very, very clearly, automation, digitalization, and net zero. How do we get to net zero? And therefore, different fuels will come in. I'm going to talk about that in a moment from now. The 8th point I wanted to make was, we are entering an era of accelerated innovation. And that's very, very important, because innovation is going to be the bridge between the challenges and the opportunities which I talked about in the morning. On one end, we have huge challenges. Other end, we have opportunities. It is the innovation which can work to really bridge the gap between the two, so that we can absolutely move on a path of growth. So therefore, why innovation is so much easier and possible today? Number one, we all are united by the concerns we have globally. Everybody is united about that, whether it is geopolitics, whether it is people, whether it is inequitable growth, whether it is climate challenges, all of us are united. So that's one. The second is, the time from ideation to action has reduced dramatically, because if you have a good idea, finance is available today. 20 years back, you would not get money. The third point in this is data. You get insights which are backed up by data. During our time, it used to be intuitive management. Today, you have objective management because of data availability. And the last is because you can collaborate across domains. I mean, you can look into, if you want to innovate, you need to get out of your domain into another domain, because otherwise you will get more of the same. You will not get great ideas by looking only into the automotive industry. Automotive industry has to probably look at pharma industry. And you'll ask me, what will a pharma do for automotive? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of cross-learning which happens there. And the 9th point which I wanted to make is, partnership is the new leadership. No company, no organization can afford to say that they will do the 360-degree of giving the final outcome to the customer by themselves. You will have to partner. If you had asked me 4 years back that Volvo will partner with Daimler is our competitor, but today Volvo is a partner to Daimler for hydrogen fuel cells. We are doing it together. If you had asked me this question 3 years ago, I would have said, no way. Today we are partner. We have partnered with NVIDIA. We have partnered with Samsung. So I think the era of partnerships has started, and I think future leadership is all about partnerships. And the 10th point I want to make in presence of Mr. Gnanendra is regulations will have a very key role to play. Data privacy versus open data. Who owns the data? Impact of AI on IP. Just the way everything is connected, regulators across ministries and domains will also have to connect with each other, because working in silos, even in government, will not be able to sort some of these challenges. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 10 points which I really wanted to make upfront to say that really, if we really, these are the trends, and if we really want to succeed going forward, we need to really tick all these 10 boxes so that we are on the road to the future. And coming to very, very quickly, let me see how much time is left. I have enough. Okay, great. Yeah. So, coming to the specific area of energy transition, I think one thing is very, very clear, and I think as Mr. Devarajan's presentation was quite explicit on this point, is that we will need to use all tools in the box to really make energy transition, which means that you will have hydrogen, you will have battery electric, you will have hydrogen fuel cell electric, you will have hydrogen being used on IC engine directly, you will have many, many other alternate fuels, you will have methanol, you will have so many other fuels, LNG and so many other things which will happen. So it's not going to be just battery electric only. So let us remember that this game is much, much bigger than just putting all our eggs in one basket. So ladies and gentlemen, it's very important to understand that all tools in the box will have to be tackled to handle this. There is no other silver bullet. And I'm so happy that India is taking the same path. Indian government has really brought out PLI schemes for hydrogen fuel cells. They have brought PLI schemes for ADAS systems. So I think it's very interesting that the government is moving very, very quickly. So we believe that two-wheelers and three-wheelers will work on more and more on lithium-ion. City transport can work on lithium-ion battery. It could be buses, it could be taxis. But I think long-haul, hub-to-hub transportation will have to happen with many other methods, and hydrogen could be one. And I think it's, of course, hydrogen fuel cells are still in infancy, but it's going to be interesting to watch the journey they are going to have. Let me turn now to the very important topic of electromobility or the EV landscape. And I think let's not look at electromobility as just a way of addressing climate change. It is one of the ways, but I think more importantly, it is a once-in-a-lifetime transformation process for the entire system of mobility. We are actually getting a chance to relook at mobility. See, we don't want the congestion in the cities today with diesel engines or petrol engines to be replaced by congestion in the city with electric vehicles. That's not sustainability, ladies and gentlemen. We don't want that situation to happen. So therefore, we need to really plan our entire public transport system. We need to plan our ride-hailing system. We need to have various things. And therefore, electric mobility or clean mobility, green mobility helps us because it is highly digital. It is highly electronic. It is highly software-based. It gives us many, many opportunities to be able to play in that game. So I think that's one thing. So to me, it is actually much more than climate. Climate is one part, but it is an opportunity for us to fix our woes with mobility in a big, big way. And the greater the logistics efficiency today, let me just give you an example how inefficient the logistics system in the world is today. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be surprised to know that less than 50% is the efficiency of a truck globally. Globally, not only in India, okay? So India may be even lower. So why? Because at more than 50% of the time, the truck is moving air and not moving cargo. It is wasting more than 50% of the fuel, time and resources of everyone. So I think that's a great opportunity. Therefore, there lies the opportunity in the entire value chain of the trucking. What do I mean by that? I mean load management, route management, vehicle-to-vehicle interface, vehicle-to-infrastructure interface. All of this, if somebody can solve these problems and say for hub-to-hub transport, I will have full loads available all the time. And if somebody can prepare an algorithm to do that, you can monetize that balance 50% of the trucking industry. And trucking industry is a large logistics industry. And that is why if our logistics efficiency or the cost of logistics in India is 14% of GDP, it can come down to 7 to 8% of GDP. I think just imagine 6 to 7% amount saved of your GDP, it can take care of healthcare of entire India. So I think those are the kind of opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to look outside electromobility, just from the narrow perspective of from fossil fuels to electric vehicle or hydrogen. Don't stand there alone. Just take it much ahead. Widen the envelope. I think push the envelope big time. And I think India, as I said, showing great promise. Mr. Devarajan has already talked about this on two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And I think what are the challenges which we are going to face in really this journey? I think one is building partnerships and electromobility ecosystem. I think all this, as I said in the beginning, is going to be a game of partnerships. Again, for charging infrastructure in Europe, a company like Volvo, we have signed up a joint venture between Traton, Daimler, and Volvo. 3 companies have come together to build infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and we compete with our vehicles, but we partner to create the infrastructure. So I think in the past, we have been obsessed with the word competition. All MBA books taught you how to beat competition, strategies for competitive advantage. I think we will have to forget that word for some time. I think we will have to get obsessed with the word collaboration. I think, and that's going to be the key name of the game going forward, ladies and gentlemen. And I think energy management is going to be a key focus area. The second life, the circularity, the second life of batteries. When do you shift the battery from use case A to use case B? And I'm very happy that India is taking lead there. Battery management systems are getting built up. Very nice algorithms are built up that the moment battery health goes below 80%, it has to be removed from the truck or from the vehicle and put into applications which are lesser demanding. And therefore, the battery life is much enlarged. So I think that is something very important. And then new business models are going to be built. And this is, I just alluded to that a bit, that if you look at the complete ecosystem of mobility, there are hundreds of other things instead of just moving from point A to point B. There are several other elements in the game. And that's what I said, software, digital technology, AI, machine learning is going to play a huge role in really making life of people much better. And I gave you the example of logistics efficiency. There lies a huge opportunity. If anybody can monetize that $400 billion of waste in a logistics system, just imagine you can amount of wealth you can create, an amount of problems which you can solve for the entire world. I think this is something very critical to my mind as well. And then, of course, there is a huge chance for India, which I see today, is to really become leaders in the R&D to capture the next round of development in the energy transition space. And I think the good news here is that nobody has a lead over you. Unlike in other things, we said India is 30 years, 40 years behind US, or maybe 50 years behind US and 20 years behind China. I think the good news here is that the starting line is now redrawn. Everybody is at the same starting line, ladies and gentlemen, and that is advantage India to me, because we have the talent. In another 20 years from now, 20% of the global talent will be from India. 1 out of every 5 people working in the world will be from India. Why not use those opportunities? And I think that is something very important to take back to my mind. So I think that's another thing which I want to say, that R&D setups and more companies are looking at India big time. Earlier they used to look at India because of cost arbitrage or because we were cheaper, but no. Today they're looking at India, I can tell you, and you will be very happily surprised that they're looking at India not only because of cost. Cost is just one element. They're looking at India because of competence which you give. They're looking at India because that they can trust you guys. They can trust you guys. That's the biggest compliment. You all can pat yourselves in the back. That they can trust you, you are competitive, and you're capable. So all these three elements all put in one. Yeah. So I think that's something wonderful. So therefore, R&D can be a huge opportunity for us when it comes to electromobility or when it comes to green mobility going forward. And then, of course, few challenges which we have are skills and the new jobs. And that is at times little scary if we stick to our past stances. Ladies and gentlemen, the jobs are going to shift dramatically. Some of these jobs are not going to exist, but many more jobs will exist. Many more new jobs will happen. Now, if we remain stuck to our not getting out of our comfort zone, then we have a problem. We will have to get out of our comfort zones, all of us, right from CEOs till a graduate engineer. All of us will have to shake off our comfort zone, because that's very important. Because if we remain in our comfort zone, we will not have jobs. We will say, oh, we don't have jobs. We don't have, the industry will cry that they don't have people, and people will cry that they don't have jobs. So I think that mismatch, we need to invest, both private sector, public sector, government, we all need to work in tandem as teams to really upskill people, to unlearn the past from the past and learn new skill sets. Of course, there will be some skill sets which will remain constant, but there will be many skill sets will change dramatically. So I think that's one thing which worries me a little, but that also is an opportunity for New India, because we are a younger New India. Our youngsters can learn. We are the youngest country in the world, whereas in overseas people are very old. They cannot learn as much. So this is again advantage India if we take it in the right way. And then, of course, charging strategies we will have to see. How do we charge? Do we have a swapping system, or do we have standard chargers? Who charges where? Do we use the same set of infrastructure? Do we create new ones? I think that is another thing which we need to do. But I think to close my talk, I want to say we remain in the midst of a massive transformation, something which has not been seen in the past many years. I mean, and when I go abroad today, I see the kind of spotlight on India like never before. And remember, this spotlight is not because our GDP is growing at 6 or 7%, or we are the fastest growing large economy. No, it is not only because of that. I think it is because of the resilience which you all have demonstrated during COVID period. 2 billion doses administered. The best COVID certificate on digital certificate which you could carry on your mobile phone. Whereas countries like America, they used to have a certificate like this, and carrying, and they will not find. So I think it was phenomenal stuff. And then, of course, very quietly, a lot of reforms happened. We have scrapped so many archaic laws, so many compliances have been reduced. So I think that has happened big time. And then huge spend on infrastructure has happened. $1.4 trillion, ladies and gentlemen, is being spent on infrastructure during a time frame of 4 years. This is more than what United States of America spends. But this goes unnoticed because we are quite cynical about our own country many times. So I think let's try to take pride in some of the good stuff which is happening. That's very important. And then, of course, reaching out to the vulnerable. People said, oh, Indians will die of starvation. I think no one died of starvation. I think there was a great thanks. And behind all this was the digital backbone, the DBT, direct benefit transfer, the Jan Dhan accounts, the Aadhaar cards, and the mobile phone. I think the trinity of these three things really did wonders for India. So ladies and gentlemen, I am very gung on the India story, but yes, we need to make some shifts which are very, very crucial, and those shifts must happen now. But I think seeing the young India, I think I am very confident that India will be second to none. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks, Kamal. It's always a pleasure to hear from you on any topic given. You are a true visionary, I would say. I'm sure everybody is inspired and would be equally gung-ho of the India's growth as elaborated by Kamal. Can I request Mr. Devesh Agarwal, past president, and also the manufacturing committee, Dr. Devarajan, Mr. Prakash, Karthikeyan, to please join and give a memento to Kamal.
Sir, please, it's a pleasure, it's an honor.
Sir. Ashim leads the Business Performance Improvement Group of NRI Consulting in India, which focuses on the automotive industry. He has a rich experience in the automotive value chain and has worked with several players in the industry while lead large-scale projects across India, Europe, Japan, South Korea, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Most of his work has been in the area of overall business strategy, new product development, scenario planning, cost reduction, project management, operations, and organizational restructuring. Ashim holds a bachelor's with honors in mechanical engineering from the National Institute of Technology and a postgraduate diploma in management from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, with Dean's Merit List rank. Ashim will take us through the electrification, the journey so far, and the road ahead. Can I request Mr. Ashim Sharma to please come? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Richa. Very good morning to all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank BCIC for calling me to this prestigious summit, especially Mr. Shah for letting me know about it and bringing me here. All the dignitaries present today, ladies and gentlemen, once again, very good morning to all of you. Or rather, yes, it's still morning to all of you. Also, I'm going to talk about electrification, the journey that's been so far, as well as the road ahead. As we all understand, we are not at the cusp, but in the middle of this transformation today. And I think speakers before me have alluded to many facets that this is bringing to the table. And I'll be touching about some of those aspects and some additional ones in my presentation today. First, looking at the journey so far, I think, yes, there is a lot of need for electric vehicles, and there are a lot of macroeconomic factors driving that, sustainability factors driving that, cost economics driving that. We also see that globally there are differences in the way EVs are getting adopted in different parts of the world. We also see how stakeholder perspectives vary, whether it's governments, whether it's OEMs, whether it's consumers. And we also look at how government policies are aiding this and how the overall value chain is getting developed. So moving on, I think first and foremost, something that we heard about earlier as well, global warming is a reality. We see all the negative consequences of climate change on a daily basis. COP27, which just happened recently, has highlighted it even more. We are a signatory to it, and as we understand, most of the countries in the world are also looking at that. In addition, also the urban air quality is very bad. We unfortunately also hold the statistic of having the maximum number of cities with bad air. So therefore, that's one area in which electric vehicles are going to contribute. And the other and very important area is also energy security. As you all know, we import a large amount of our crude oil, and that leads to energy security issues. Sometimes it can also lead to forex issues, especially due to the volatility in the crude oil prices, as have been seen from time to time. In addition, I think Dr. Devarajan anyway talked about it in a lot of detail as well, the sustainability goals. Along the UN SDGs, of course, they do affect all of them, electric vehicles, but in particular, if we talk about it, 5 goals, which is goal number 7, affordable and clean energy, industry innovation and infrastructure, and very importantly, reduced inequalities where, in fact, electrification of public transport could play a big role, which is goal number 10, sustainable cities and communities, again, where public transport, apart from private transport, plays a big role, goal 11, and also climate action, which is goal 13. So all in all these factors are making us move towards electrification. We also see that, with the increasing scale, the value proposition of electric vehicles is becoming more and more apparent to consumers. As you can see here, when we talk about four-wheeler PVs, and when we talk about the initial purchase cost of an ICE versus purchase cost of an EV, we see there is a significant amount of delta out there, close to about 120% higher. Therefore, for a personal use case, depending on how much we drive on a daily basis, the payback period could be anywhere between 9 to 10 years, which is quite long. But when we come to the taxi segment, this dramatically reduces to less than half, to about 4 to 5 years. On the two-wheeler side, where we see a lot of electrification happening in the country, we see the initial cost delta is lower, and also the payback period is much lower, 2 to 3 years for personal use case, and just 1 to 2 years when we talk of the commercial use case. And in three-wheelers, which is clearly a winner out there, we see the payback period reduces dramatically to 1 to 1.5 years, of course, there being only commercial use cases there. Therefore, we see segment-wise, this is varying a lot. We also see when we look at the globe, the electrification is taking place in different ways and means, and also at different growth rates. China, of course, leads the pack with more than 6 million plug-in vehicles, so that also includes some of the PHEVs. The US at close to about 1 million, Europe at about 2.7 million, Japan at 59,000, India at 48,000, and Latin America again at more than 2 million, at 261,000 vehicles there. So again, we see that if you look at it globally, only electric vehicles contributed to about 9% of the total vehicle sales. But this is 4 times their market share in 2019. Therefore, the growth has been extremely dramatic over the last couple of years. China and Europe are accounting for more than 85% of these global electric vehicle sales. But yes, in the emerging economies, still EVs are lagging behind a lot, primarily on account of the cost of ownership and the higher, initial purchase price issues. But when we look at 2 and 3 wheelers, which is shown by the donut at the bottom, we see that China accounted for about 95% of nearly 10 million electric 2 and 3 wheelers. And we also see that India, which sold about 1 million E2 wheelers in 2022 alone, we see that E2 wheelers and E3 wheelers are making a big foray. When we talk about India, we talk about China, and increasingly we'll see that also happen in places like Africa and also Southeast Asia. When we look at the adoption rate across markets, we see that in US and Europe, the cost delta is significant. But at the same time, as you can see also, that the GDP per capita is higher, so it doesn't pinch consumers as much. The affordability quotient of people is also higher. China has made a lot of progress in terms of the supply chain. Therefore, you see the delta between an ICE vehicle and an EV vehicle has shrunk dramatically in case of China. And therefore, we see high adoption rates out there. India, we see that this cost delta is still significant, 120% compared to equivalent ICE models, both at the starting price and also at the weighted average price of vehicles. This is what is baking into the difference in adoption rates. Of course, subsidies are also there, but at the same time, the GDP per capita and the delta in the purchase price is causing this kind of an anomaly when we look at growth rates across the globe. Looking more closely at India, we see that the overall automobile industry grew at about 21%, where in the same period we saw EVs only grow at about 157%. Also, if we look at the segmental EV penetration as of March 23, we see in case of personal cars, it's 2.5%, in case of two-wheelers, it's 6%, Electric three-wheelers, it's 52%, buses is 7%. Also, we see a lot of year-on-year growth, especially if you look at cars, it's about 139%, even though the penetration is low, but the growth is very high. Again, two-wheelers, 73%, three-wheelers, 92%. So we see electrification is happening in a big way. Of course, more happening in case of two and three-wheelers. At the same time, we see the extent of the charging infra is also growing, whether it's DC fast, AC, or even swapping models. Globally, we see three kinds of movement around charging. One is plug-in charging, which is onboard AC or off-board DC, which is there, and then battery swapping, which could be side swapping, rear swapping, bottom swapping, or even picking up and swapping right as we see in case of two and three-wheelers in India. Also, we see certain emerging charging solutions come in. I think wireless charging coming in. I think Mr. Bali would know about how Sweden is also adopting that in a large way. Mobile charging, where vehicle carries a portable battery and goes out when, say, you stop by somewhere for a meeting and you get a top-up charge as a result of that, or maybe in areas where the charging network is not very widely prevalent. Also, we see vehicle-to-grid infrastructure coming around. Of course, the last column, most of these are only in the pilot stage, whereas the plug-in charging is most prevalent and swapping is also growing in a big manner. When we look at the charging ecosystem, we see, of course, there are a lot of advantages and also some disadvantages across the different kinds of models. When it comes to plug-in charging, yes, it's convenient for consumers. It's there in public places. It could also be at home. There is simplicity in usage, also supports fast charging of EVs, and increasingly we see with the 800-volt systems coming in, the charging times are reducing dramatically. But yes, some places the electric grid may not be up to the mark to be able to charge several vehicles, especially fast charge several vehicles at the same time. There would be lack of standardization, also there are high upfront costs. On the other hand, there is the battery swapping, which has a lower stress on the grid. It's compact. Also, the battery maintenance costs are taken up by the operator. But yes, then the capex is higher. Also, has higher GST on standalone batteries right now. Also, applicability only in case of light vehicles. Of course, in buses also we've seen some pilots, but primarily in two, three-wheelers where you don't need robotic-based swapping, the capex remains optimal for large-scale adoption. And then also mobile chargers, as I said, for catering to on-demand needs, allays range anxiety, that you can call a charger anytime you have a low battery, so something like akin to a power bank. Also, we see, but there is limited charge capacity and also higher downtime compared to fixed charging as far as some of these mobile charging applications are concerned. If you look at the overall charger stock, we see that's improved dramatically. We have about 500,000 chargers that were installed globally, the fast chargers in 2021 alone, which is more than total number of public chargers which were available in 2017. So in 1 year itself, we have exceeded that number. Also in terms of slow chargers, we see about 1.2 million chargers were installed, with China accounting for about 55% of those installations. And also in battery swapping, we see, of course, global players like Gogoro, Alton, Neo, and also a homegrown player very much in Bangalore, Sun Mobility, making a lot of inroads. And we see this taking up in a big manner as far as two and three-wheelers are concerned. Another perspective I think that we need to look at, and it's also been mentioned in talks earlier, is stakeholder perspectives. So when we try to balance between sustenance and sustainability, when we look at the OEM perspective, I think OEMs are drawing a fine line between the two. There is the tightening of norms on internal combustion engines that is going on, which requires large investments, and then you need to sell those vehicles in order to also recoup those investments. There's also tight timelines to that, so a lot of R&D resources get engaged in that. Dr. Devarajan mentioned about how BS6 was leapfrogged in the country. Similarly, now RDE coming in, also CAFE norms, etc. Coupled with this push for electrifications, we also see that they need to balance the affordability and value proposition of their electrified offerings for existing and new customers, especially India being a very highly cost-sensitive market. But on the other hand, I think all the OEMs are also very much partner of the sustainability mission, and we see they are helping the government meet the COP targets. They've set up GHG Scope 1 and Scope 2 emission reduction targets, renewable energy power purchase targets, and also looking at alternate options, which could be bridging options like compressed natural gas, hybridization, and flex fuels, all of which also require investments, but at the same time would also contribute towards the sustainability objectives of the country. Looking at it from the government's perspective, I think the balance is more tilted towards sustainability there. Of course, the sustenance angle is there. The government wants to ensure that in our quest to build a new competitive advantage, we do not lose the incumbent one and therefore protect jobs. And therefore, large reskilling programs are also underway, and many schemes have also been rolled out, which I will touch upon in the later part of my presentation. But at the same time, they're also looking at reduction of dependence on imported oil, for example, which also goes in the sustenance quotient of it. But there is a larger push towards sustainability, in order to reduce the carbon footprint. Some of that comes in from our also COP27 commitments, reduction in air pollution and its associated ills in terms of the health cost to GDP that is there. I think we heard about the logistics loss to GDP. I think also the health loss to GDP that comes in is a big factor that grows in the mind of the government. And also the EVs can give a boost to the renewable energy sector. So that is also tied in the sustainability goals of the government. Finally, and very importantly, customer is king. And there we see that the sustenance aspect outweighs the sustainability aspect, especially in a country like India. We see the personal users want to look at the upfront cost of the vehicle, and it matters most in the shift towards EVs. The savings in the running cost as well as recharging cost. Also for commercial applications, the uptime of the vehicle is very critical, and therefore how much would be the charging time that they would need to spend becomes critical from their perspective. Of course, there is also the case for sustainability, and we see people who have multiple cars, especially in the car segment, now also opting for an EV as part of their own car fleets. Also, let's have a look at some of the expectations we had versus what is the reality today. There was an expectation that battery prices will steadily go on decreasing, but we've seen that in the recent past, there's been a bump up in the prices. The cost of raw material has increased. This is primarily on account of the fact, though in the Earth's crust, there is enough lithium, for example, there, but there's not enough mining capacity. And because of this, we've seen an uptick happening in costs. Estimates also suggest that with all the engineering, we may be able to reach levels such as $110 to $112 per kilowatt hour. But below that, we would need to have some sort of control also on the supply chain. Then we talked about EVs in all segments. What we see is the least price sensitive segment has the highest options, which is the luxury car segment. We have a lot of options out there, and but hopefully that will also change in the near future. And we are seeing increasingly a lot of options being made available in the two-wheeler segment as well, apart from the three-wheeler segment, and now also the LCV segment making a foray there. IC EV range parity was expected, but we do see that there is range anxiety right now. But when the charging speed increases or the range increases, the cost also increases. And therefore, in order to keep the EVs affordable, sometimes there is also a compromise on the range as well as the charging speed. So that still is not reached parity with internal combustion engine vehicles. And finally, importantly, EVs would use completely clean energy? Well, that's not happened. We still generate a significant amount of energy from coal. We had a plan to install about 100 gigawatt grid-connected solar power, which has been set up as part of the National Solar Mission. We've reached about 60%, 62% of that. But hopefully in the near future, also tying in with the COP27 commitments, we will be able to make up for these shortfalls as well. Now let's have a look at how policies are shaping up. Well, globally we see countries have come up with a lot of policies for promoting EVs, whether it's federal tax credit systems, for example, in the US. We also see state incentives that have come in, charging infrastructure funding has come in. Also, the CAFE norms go in, as well as zero emission vehicle mandates have come in. When we look at China, China's officially ended its purchasing subsidy as of 2023, but there are still exemptions from purchase tax, from license plate quotas, etc. Also, the carbon credit trading system is well established. India is also making inroads into that with the draft coming out very recently. Also, there are stricter regulations coming on gasoline vehicles. In Europe, we see again there are purchase incentives which have been rolled out by many countries, such as Germany offers a subsidy of about close to 6,900 euros for the purchase of new EV, France about 6,000 euros. We also see low emission zones which have come in many of the European cities, wherein only EVs are allowed to ply. And we also see zero emission mandates which have come in, which will restrict the use of internal combustion engine vehicles. Of course, there is a talk about at least including e-fuel powered vehicles as part of that. Closer home in India, we see, yes, we already heard about the FAME 1 and FAME 2 scheme. Also the Advanced Cell Chemistry PLI and Automotive and Auto Components PLI. So all of which were central government schemes, both on the demand and the supply side. Complementing that have been state government schemes. I think Mr. Jairaj also spoke about many of those. There are road tax, registration charge exemptions, early bird discounts, also input tariff relief for electricity has been reduced, all of which are on the demand side, and also on the supply side, state manufacturing incentives come in, all of which are promoting the purchase of EVs by consumers, as well as helping the ecosystem get developed. As a result of all this, we see both new age and incumbent OEMs and people in the charging infrastructure, also in the components business, have put up large-scale capacities in India, as you can see from some of the announcements and plans that have been announced. Also, we see as part of the entire value chain, this is excluding charging, we see a lot of new players have come in, whether it's in cell and battery manufacturing, the electric vehicle manufacturing, EV sales and dealerships, in after sales and services, as well as in, very importantly, component and battery recycling. Well, that was the journey so far. If we look at the road ahead, we can look at some of the growth forecasts of EVs. What are some of the technology trends that are coming up? Supply chain trends, emergence of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and also emerging EV requirements in terms of skills. Starting out, we see that countries around the world have set up aggressive electric vehicle adoption targets, like the US, California, Massachusetts, New York, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington have set up 100% phase-out targets for pure ICE vehicles. We see the UK also intends to sell only BEVs and FCEVs by 2035. We see similarly China has official phase-out targets that have been announced. Germany also full IC phase-out, with the exception of course, vehicles powered by e-fuels. Similarly, we see also Chile and Morocco also joining the bandwagon in terms of some of these phase-out targets and new energy vehicle targets being taken. Closer home in India, we see targets that have been taken by Niti Aayog across two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler and buses for 2030. I think this is very well known. Clearly, two- and three-wheelers leading the pack there, followed by four-wheelers, primarily driven by fleets, and also adoption in case of bus fleets, which are also driven by government mandates. As a result of that, we see a broad amount of technological opportunities and technology trends emerging. One is on advanced cells and battery packs. There is a global trend towards producing cells that can package in more range in a lower size, so increasing the energy density of vehicles. Then better efficiency in EV subsystems. We are already talking about the 800-volt systems, which enable fast charging to take place. And related to that is the fast charging infrastructure. For the 800 volts, then we need the 400 kilowatt charging infrastructure to be able to fast charge those EVs. We also see a push towards affordable EV technologies in emerging markets that is there, and battery swapping here making a big inroad in terms of decoupling the cost of the vehicle and the cost of the battery. So we see that coming in a big way. And also on climate terrain sensitive designs, so battery chemistries like LFP, which are probably, which is lithium iron phosphate, which is more suited for tropical climates like India, and also high temperature climates like India, and also where the material is available in more abundance. Also, if we look at in sort of more detail, we see new chemistries coming up in terms of batteries, which improve energy density, wear rates, and also reducing the the requirement for certain metals. Similarly, we see in terms of BMS and power electronics, longevity of battery packs and efficiency in charging conversion. Similarly, in motors, there's a large drive to be able to replace some of the rare earths with alternate materials so as to de-risk the supply chains. Looking more deeply into battery chemistries, we see NMC is the most prevalent right now. It has very good advantages in terms of energy density, charging speed, also medium in terms of affordability, but lower in terms of raw material availability and also the life cycle. Contrast that with LFP, which is emerging as a good mass market option. Affordability is much better, raw material availability is much better, but yes, the charging, the energy density is lower, the life cycles are kind of better than NMC, but the charging speed is much lower. And then also we have niche chemistries like lithium titanium oxide, also new neodymium-based chemistries that are coming in, which can provide very high life cycles. The battery may be able to outlive the life of the vehicle, very high charging speeds, but then the affordability is low, and also raw material constraints are still there. As you could see, many of the Indian companies are also adopting all of these. The other thing, and we heard about that, lightweighting. Typically, an ICE vehicle is about 1.25 times heavier than an EV is 1.25 times heavier than an ICE vehicle. Also, we understand that a 10% reduction in weight can increase the range of the vehicle by about 14%, and therefore a lot of measures are being taken around lightweighting, whether it's in body in white, where we've heard, for example, Tesla talking about cast panels instead of press panels. We're seeing in chassis parts, composite fiber reinforced plastic, CFRP composites coming in a bigger way. In terms of powertrain, there is a lot of focus and reduction of the weight of the motors. And for example, Koenigsegg is developed a 335 horsepower motor which just weighs about 28.5 kgs. Also in terms of trims, a lot of work going on in terms of lightweighting. And very importantly, in terms of batteries as well, as you know about the new Tesla Model Y, uses the 4680 NMC cells, which is lighter and almost half the weight of the battery that is used in Rivian, for instance. Also, in terms of India, I think there's a huge opportunity that electric vehicle components, and I've only looked at some select components here, offer about a $4 billion opportunity by 2025, and almost doubling actually to 2030 to $8 billion. Of which battery and powertrain and power electronics would remain very strategic in terms of sourcing. And also we see the others like connectivity, control systems, chassis and body parts, again remaining significant as we look out. So even for the component industry, there's a big opportunity out there. As Mr. Bali also said, there is a challenge, but there's also an equal opportunity out there that we must tap into. Also, when we look at the charging infrastructure, as I mentioned some time back, yes, we see this increasing from 50 kilowatt to 50 to 100, to 100 to 150, to up to 300, and now also greater than 300 kilowatt, which is the 400 kilowatt kind of systems coming in, which will be able to extract the benefits of the 800 volt systems that we are going to see coming into vehicles with this shift towards faster charging. And therefore, there will be a related change in terms of the charger design, the BMS to be able to manage such ultra fast charging, and also the power electronics, as well as even the wiring harnesses and the circuitry that will be used to be able to handle 800 volt systems in the vehicle. We also see a huge push coming in towards expansion of the charging infrastructure, and we expect the charging stock to grow 7 times by 2025. Across India, as you already know, the Ministry of Power has the guidelines of there being a charger in a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer grid, and also at 25 kilometers on both sides of the arterial highways. We see in the stage 1, 9 major cities with population greater than 4 million have been earmarked for this. And stage 2, we'll see state capitals and other population centers coming up. And also major highway corridors, and very close here, for example, the Bangalore-Chennai, Bangalore-Mysore highways being chosen for the charging infrastructure development. Finally, very importantly, I think in terms of supply chain, due to scarcity of raw material, we are going to see global cases of increasing recycling to cater to some of this demand that is there. Alternate battery chemistries coming in a bigger way. Ethical sourcing becoming more and more important, especially for cobalt sourcing, which currently is sourced from places like Congo, where, if we have to follow SDG goals, maybe we'll not be able to comply to those. We also see a lot of backward integration happening between companies, the most recent being, for example, CATL and Ford. Also with countries and companies which were not hitherto thought to be partnering, and I think goes in the same spirit as we heard about Daimler and Volvo collaborating. Finally, very importantly, control over the equipment supply. We know there are embargoes, for example, pressed by the West on sale of equipment that makes semiconductors for China. Therefore, China's earmarked about $140 billion to be able to develop it on its own. Closer home, we look at the deposits that have been found in J&K. For us to be able to extract those in an environmentally sound way, probably direct lithium extraction technology will be key. Touching a little bit about hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, I think apart from the electric vehicle powertrain, we see hydrogen tanks and fuel cell stacks being additional things that would be coming in over there. We also see a lot of sales of that happening. When we see in terms of the number of years and some of the key markets there, we see, for example, South Korea leading the pack there, also US, Japan. We already know about, for example, Toyota vehicles, Honda vehicles that have been there in use. So this is the next thing coming on the anvil, and very importantly also in terms of commercial vehicles, we'll see large-scale adoption. Also on the skill side, we see software engineering becoming more and more prevalent. Depending on the type of vehicle, we could see software content increase from 50 to 100% across the different vehicle types. Also electronics becoming more and more commonplace, and therefore we needing those skill sets coming in. Also material science on account of light weighting and also changes in chemical energy, which goes a large way into the batteries coming. So a lot of new skill sets will also be needed, and our workforce will have to get reskilled for these as well. We also see new business models coming in. Won't develop on those much. I think they are very well known. Pay-as-you-go, vehicle subscription, battery as a service, and also retrofitment coming in to ease this. And finally, on my last slide, I think we will need a lot of cooperation between government and industry for this to happen. Continued demand incentives, more launches would be needed for consumers to be able to take up those. Also continued supply incentives, but at the same time, OEMs will have to develop bespoke EV platforms or skateboards. We see raw material support will be very critical, and we'll also need to build capacity in the supply chain on the back of these incentives to harness the EV potential. Also, a long-term regulatory roadmap will go a long way in helping the industry prepare in a better manner for this transition, and also charging infrastructure will need to keep pace. With that, I reach the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
Thanks, Ashim. Your presentation was pretty insightful. Can I request Mr. Thiago Valiappa, past president, and the manufacturing committee to please hand over a memento to Mr. Ashim Sharma? Thank you. Our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Gnanendra Kumar, will have to leave for his other prior engagements. We thank you, sir, for being here. We will have a tea break for exact 20 minutes, and we will assemble back sharp at 11:55 to go on to the next track for the event. We have Mercedes-Benz as a partner, and they have a display of their EV vehicle, which is next to the coffee area. You can visit them as well. the track 2, which will focus on electric vehicle design, development, sustainability, and net zero emission. This is going to be an interesting segment with a power-packed speakers and the topic which is all around this industry. Hydrogen as a fuel for ICE and EV, its development, storage, and challenges. This topic will be elaborated by Dr. Lakshmi Narayanan. Dr. Lakshmi Narayanan studied at the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras for his BTech, MS, and PhD degrees. He worked at Lundborg University of Technology and Kirloskar Oil Engines Limited for about 5 and 20 years respectively, before moving to Ashok Leyland in 2002 to head the engine R&D. From 2011 to 2019, he was the CTO and technical advisor at Simpson and Company Limited,
which is a challenge today. So that is why fuel cells will become, are attractive, but may become a challenge. If you see the cost of production and the carbon intensity trade-off, you can see this graph on the left side. It shows the leftmost is gray hydrogen and the rightmost is the green. In between you have blue hydrogen. The carbon intensity, the damage it makes to the environment is shown by the blue line, okay, and the cost is shown by the orange line. So essentially, to make a green hydrogen of 1 liter or 1 kg of green hydrogen, we have to spend at least 5 times the money that you are putting for producing gray hydrogen. So it's very highly uneconomical. Essentially, if you see the load on the atmosphere, you will see the blue line, the green line, the green hydrogen is highly comfortable for the environmentalists. Okay, it doesn't load the atmosphere with carbon dioxide, whereas the gray hydrogen loads a lot of carbon dioxide. The biomedia, as I said in the beginning, is achieved with the help of blue hydrogen. In the world, if you see the current production, most of it is gray hydrogen, and about a quarter of the production is blue, and very less green hydrogen is being produced. This is all because of the economics. Okay, so the idea is to enhance both green and blue shaded areas over time. This will take another 20 years as far as we estimate the timeline. So now we will come to the power generation using hydrogen. There are 3 options for making an environmentally clean automobiles. One is battery electric vehicle, which I will not discuss very much here. We have an option to run a fuel cell based vehicle, which is called H2FC or H2ICE. It is interesting to see the graph on the left, which shows the fuel cell is having very high efficiency at about 20% load. And as the percentage load increases, its efficiency decreases, okay? And the dotted orange line shows the efficiency of a H2IC engine, okay? H2IC engine has got a characteristic. The efficiency of the H2IC engine increases with load. So we have 3 interesting scenarios. One, load percentage of car, which is around 15, passenger car. Load percentage of heavy trucks in advanced countries is around 30%, whereas in India, our load percentage is around 60 to 70%. You can see the difference in the efficiencies, of fuel cell driven vehicle, and the H2ICE is very small at the load factor that we are used to in India or developing countries. So this graph makes H2ICE or H2IC engine more attractive for heavy duty trucks and heavy duty off-road vehicles, including earth movers, tractors, etc. Not cranes, of course. So H2IC engine is a very attractive proposal for heavy duty engines in India. It is already attractive in other countries, but the situation is more emphasized in India. So, this is the cost of various heavy duty vehicles as of today, and H2IC engine or hydrogen IC engine falls somewhere in between the fuel cell vehicle and diesel vehicle as far as the cost is concerned. So it's still a diesel heavy duty vehicle is the most cost effective vehicle over an operation period of 5 to 7 years or even 8 years in India. So to break that, we have to make the H2 or to make H2 more attractive. We have to bridge this cost for which there are many options. We'll just see something. Of course, coming back to the fuel cell, which is a dream project for many engineers, but it's not very practical in my opinion. Okay, we have various types of fuel cells. We can have an alkaline fuel cell where the alkali is an electrolyte, or we can have a proton exchange member with an electrolyte by which we can conduct ions inside the fuel cell and the electrons outside and produce energy. But this needs extra paraphernalia. We have to store this energy in a battery, and from that battery we have to extract electrical energy to run electrical motor. Why we have to do this? Because fuel cell cannot give burst of power. When we press the pedal, all of a sudden we need a lot of power, and after some time, when we get into the cruising mode, we need less power. So this type of fluctuating power is not at all liked by the fuel cell. So we need a reservoir, which is nothing but a battery. So all the difficulties of battery electric vehicles are loaded onto the fuel cell vehicle. And the fuel cell initially has got high voltage, but we can't depend on the high voltage corresponding to the low current density. We are working on the linear portion where we are having a slightly lower voltage. Of course, we have to remove the water as quickly as possible from the cathode as it forms, otherwise it will flood and there will be a drop in potential. So this entire thing has to be a unit, and then we have to work with the fuel cell. Of course, this technology is not such a drag on the fuel cell. More of punishment will be by the lack of purity of hydrogen that we are going to use in a fuel cell. We need a 99.99% pure hydrogen for this, which is not possible because as we transport and save hydrogen, we produce a lot of muck and dust, and this pollutes the expensive catalyst at both anode and cathode, and the efficiency of the fuel cell will drop off. Of course, this is the layout and of a hydrogen fuel cell in a car. As we said, we needed an extra battery and a motor, and the fuel cell produces heat which has to be taken out using a radiator and cooling system. Okay, so it looks almost like our regular car in the front. And these are the typical parts. that are of the system. Okay. It produces water at the outlet, so it's all very attractive, but we need to have very clean hydrogen. Then we come to the hydrogen internal combustion engine. As we said, I will not go here. So an H2 fuel cell vehicle will be economical or equal to the H2 IC engine in 7 years. That means for first 7 years, it will be less economical than a H2 IC engine. Similarly, battery electric vehicle will be less economical for about 9 years. So for heavy engines, if you want to be environmentally friendly, hydrogen IC engine is preferable. So coming to the nitty-gritties, the hydrogen is having a very high flame velocity, hundreds of times that of gasoline or even natural gas. And it is also producing very high flame temperature. High flame temperature brings with it very high nitric oxide emissions if you burn it in an internal combustion engine. So this nitric oxide can be cleaned only with an expensive selective catalytic reduction method. We cannot use the three-way catalyst that we are very commonly used to in a gasoline engine at stoichiometric combustion. Basically, to use the three-way catalyst, you need some carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon to reduce nitric oxide. And both are not available in a hydrogen engine. So we have to resort to very expensive technique. Alternatively, we can run it lean, that means at equivalence ratio of 0.4 or air excess ratio of 22.2 and reduce the reduce the rate at which nitric oxide is produced phenomenally. That means we have to plan a hydrogen engine that runs at 2.2 air excess ratio. This is because of high flame velocity and high flame temperature. So now, we have various challenges. We can not run this at stoichiometric composition just like we do gasoline engines very conveniently for the last 80 years. Okay, we have to run it very lean at 2.2. When we say we want to have air excess at 2.2, we have to admit a lot of air into the cylinder. Otherwise, it will produce 2 times less power compared to a gasoline engine. So nobody will take it. So we have to turbocharge the engine. Okay, and then we have another problem with hydrogen. It is very, its density is so low. If you mix hydrogen and air in the inlet manifold, it occupies a lot of volume inside the cylinder, and the effective volumetric ratio efficiency will drop by 35%. So what we have to do is we have to use direct injection. And in direct injection engine, we have a problem. Even then, we have a problem of backfire, basically because hydrogen has a very low ignition energy. Because of that, the quenching distance is very less. What is quenching distance? It is the ability of flame to pass or escape through narrow gaps, which is possible through piston ring gap or valve seat, etc. So we don't want to have hydrogen air mixture in the cylinder. So the idea is to have a pre-chamber engine, which is shown in the last line, where we have located both the injector and the spark plug. And then also we have a turbocharging system to increase the amount of air that can be gulped inside. So this is the arrangement which is producing as much energy or shaft energy as a diesel engine, and it can compete with diesel engine at full strength. Okay, you can see both the spark plug and the injector are located in the chamber, and also the piston design is same as our standard diesel piston design, and we don't need any complicated or special parts above the piston. We need only the pre-chamber to be made of special stainless steel. And this addresses all the challenges, including hydrogen embrittlement, which we often face when hydrogen meets with the conventional materials. Okay, so this is a method, and in fact, there are two options of pre-chamber. One, where we are injecting the fuel as we have shown in the previous slide inside the pre-chamber, or we can inject above the main chamber. The one which we are injecting in the pre-chamber will enable us to run it very lean, okay, and it offers very low nitric oxide and very high fuel efficiency. I'll just complete it. So this is the scheme, okay. So this shows the nitric oxide at lambda equal to 2.2, or a very lean mixture, is as low as 14, whereas at stoichiometric composition it is around 4,300. Okay. So this slide tells us the way we can improve the shaft power from a hydrogen engine, okay, by boosting and using a pre-chamber. This goes through the details of the calculation. Okay, you can produce more power than a diesel engine. So this shows the route we take, avoiding all the pitfalls of other pitfalls of hydrogen as a IC engine fuel, and be successful with a good engine. So I just thought I will touch upon transporting and storing of hydrogen. I will share these slides with the organization. And again, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was insightful. I think we would need more time to spend with you to learn more about this topic. Can I request Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, past president, to please come and felicitate the guest? Can I also request the manufacturing committee to join? Thank you. Our next speaker for today is Mr. Girish Ramaswamy, Head of Engineering, Vitesco Technologies, and he'll be speaking on powering e-motion. Mr. Girish has more than 20 years of experience in automotive domain, leading 600 plus engineers. He has varied experience in engine management systems and product development. Currently, he is leading the R&D team for powertrain electrification products. Please, sir. The timer is in the front. You can keep a tab.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll try to, finish my presentation within the time slot of 20 minutes. So I'll be talking on powering e-motion for this presentation. So what I'll do is, since I represent Vitesco Technologies, I talk about the company profile briefly. Also, I'll give an outlook. Some of my friends already talked about how electrification is being raised up across the globe. Also talk about some of the products, what do we have as our portfolio, then of course the summary. So even though I talk about Vitesco Technologies products during my presentation, I'm sure you can see the journey of how we had developed our products in the last few years, so that when we see the portfolio of products, it's a huge number of products what we developed. The important thing is we transformed ourselves from an IC engine related product development company into electrification related product development company. Just to give some overview, we are a German-based company, present around 50 locations across the globe for both production and development. Situated close to Munich, city called Regensburg. Last year we achieved a sales of more than 9 billion euros, and we have employee strength of more than 38,000 globally. We are a leading global partner for providing, propulsion system related products, and also electrification pioneer because we are in this field for more than 10 years now. Electronics champion, of course, being in this field, car is getting populated with lots of electronics and software. That's also our DNA, where we provide, electronics, software, and the mechatronics related components. And of course, strong position in electronic controls, as well as sensing technologies and actuators, which are the main, different portfolios for our powertrain related components. Just to start, answering the question of whether do we really need electrification or not, in the next 3 slides, I think I'll talk about how the world is embracing electrification. Legislation is the key driver for powertrain components. And across the globe, legislation is driving and clearly focusing on eliminating CO2 emissions. And it is, of course, driving our future vehicle markets. When you look at the slide, say where the CO2 targets across the globe, especially in EU, USA, and China, when you look today, and maybe by 2035, in some countries or some continents, it's coming to 0. And China is also catching up, which is a clear indicator that we need to shift out of IC engines. Second one, important aspect, which is of course driven by the market. By 2027, the study shows clearly when you put together BEVs and PHEVs, these two models will outnumber IC engines in 2027. Also, when you go deeper, 70% there is an increase of BEVs and PHEVs when starting from 21 to 24. As well, it increases by 110% when you combine 48-volt and FHEVs from 21 to 24. Important to note here is that 21, 22 is already past, which is a history, which is a reality, I would say, because in the next 2 years, we achieve these numbers. Third important one, the trend. Trend also clearly shows electrification is on the rise. When you look at the gray part across the 3 graphs there, it is diminishing. And it is being occupied by the greener part of BEVs and PHEVs. So there will be an increase of more than 80% in BEVs penetration by 2025 and increases by more than 120% by 2030. So with this, it's certain that electrification will be the future and it keeps accelerating. Year on year, I think we are witnessing this. We are seeing maybe not To that extent, in India, especially for four-wheelers, yes, for two-wheelers, yes, but four-wheelers, we are slow here, but across the globe, when you look at, I think it's really, really accelerating. So keeping this in mind, I think as a company, what we did in 2018, we strategized in such a way that even though we were a kind of hardcore IC engine related product development, especially in the area of powertrain, we decided to step in and convert all our engineers to develop EV related products. Which when you see that, this is the slide which talks about our different sets of products that are in the portfolio today. When you look at the product portfolio, it really covers the product related to high voltage systems, whether it's BEVs or plug-in hybrids or the full hybrids, as well as for the 48-volt systems. So when you look at horizontally, right from the start of electronic controls, which is really the brain of any car, there are products, we call it as powertrain domain control units or vehicle control units or master controllers. It's called in different names. This is where the entire software or the USPs of the vehicle manufacturer sits in. And e-machines, which provides the propulsion basically. So these are the machines which drive your vehicle, e-axle drive systems, which really forms the basic of propulsion of any car. And also for 48 volts, we do have BSGs in place. And then the inverter, which maximizes the efficiency of your e-machine, which is a complex electronic system, because over the years, it has really developed in such a way that today we call or we use latest materials called the SiC, silicon carbides, which really improves your efficiency of e-motor. At the same time, it gives additional mile to your batteries so that energy is used in an efficient way. Converters, very important because it distributes the board net as well as the voltage that are needed for different components in a car. Energy management, which is very important, the BMS systems, which is also a kind of unique selling point for any of the OEMs. So also the way it is managed and also to get that additional energy stored and also at what time we need to charge our batteries, everything gets decided using this portfolio of products. Last but not the least, thermal management. Electricity is used inside the car. Obviously, there will be a lot of heat that gets generated. We need to manage this heat in a proper way. This is where I think there are different sets of products, whether it's coolant modules or pumps, valves, name it. I think these are the components that will manage the heat management within your car. All in all, I would say that, most of the needed components for any kind of powertrain inside a EV car, this portfolio will, come handy. At the same time, the system competence, this is what I was talking. When I look at 3 or 4 years ago, we could see only 2 or 3 components in the portfolio. In the last 3 years, we transformed ourselves, including transforming our own engineers, where they were developing our own mechanical related components to, develop EV components. This is where we are today. It is doable actually, but with a pain of course, but we are really transforming towards such a kind of new portfolio of products for EVs. What I'll do is I'll not touch upon all these products, but only I'll give brief information on our master controllers as well as few words on e-machines. So before I step in there, as I was talking about, being a full system supplier, when you develop all these products, your experience in the area of IC engines cannot be neglected. That's where, the DNA gets carried out. And the use of such a kind of DNA or the system know-how what we have is very helpful, And we could see when we developed all these products over the last few years. I think this is a popular slide. I think some of you might have gone through this. Now it's no longer that in the earlier days when we are developing IC engines, you take a ECU, you populate it with your application software, you start your engine. It doesn't work like that today. So when you go for EVs, we need to define our architecture because amount of ECUs, the hardware electronics, and also the software on top of it is really, really complex. We need to define the strategy, we need to define the architecture for a particular car so that it is sustainable for a very, very longer period. Otherwise, we lose time when you want to release each and every car. So that's why I think one of the most popular architecture what we see is this 3 steps: zone controllers, master controllers, and the in-vehicle servers. Zone controller is predominantly, mainly for computing the zonal ECUs, where it transforms information between or distributes information between the ECUs. Typically, we could see around 4 to 10 such kind of ECUs in a car. Master controllers, this really helps multi-party integration. As I said, software is becoming dominant. And with the advent of master controllers, where OEMs can give their own software code, because that's where the USP lies in. It can be object coded into these ECUs, where you will not reveal whatever the strategy inside all your application software to the outside world. But this master controller helps to do that, where multi party software can be embedded together. At the same time, it's AUTOSAR specific, but it also contains lots of software complexity within its side. Last one, in-vehicle server, which is very important, high computing, because this is very much needed from the user perspective. Whatever the user see, they need to get an update. And if you want to do a kind of over-the-air update, I think this is where it becomes handy. So I think this is the framework where each and every vehicle will move towards in the coming years. And you could see onto your right, there are 3 steps again. BSW, which is the basic core of basic software. And then comes the AUTOSAR Classic until we have the master controllers. When we introduce in-vehicle servers, then becomes adaptive AUTOSAR, where more and more over-the-air updates and all these exchange of information will happen. So AUTOSAR Classic is needed. So, as I said, master controller is the brain where it interacts between both powertrain and chassis systems for real-time functions, and it's very, very, important from any vehicle perspective. Axle drive, so it has also gone into kind of a variation in the last few years. When we started our journey in 2011, we had 2 generations there, and in 2019 we had the 3rd generation e-drive, which went into SOP. In 24, which is next year, the 4th generation will come into life. But when you look at each and every part of the overall journey, we see huge benefits and also the efficiency coming in. So in today's Gen 4, when you see, I think it's one of the important where we are able to reduce by 30 kgs in weight. At the same time, it contains state-of-the-art newer materials, the SiC what I was talking, silicon carbide, which really gives more and more efficiency while driving your car. So just to give some overview on this axle drive generation 4, it has both a inverter, motor and reducer together integrated. It's highly scalable because it can adapt a lot of power ranges and highly power density with compact packaging. And there are no connectors between motor and your inverter because it's completely embedded. And also efforts are reduced when you want to integrate the e-machine into your vehicle. So just to substantiate that, it can cater to the power range of say 80 kilowatt to 230 kilowatt, with a torque range of 1,700 to 4,000 Newton meter, and it uses permanent magnet synchronous machine weighing between 45 to 80 kgs depending on the power rating. Of course, functional safety to the standards of ASIL-D. But I think good machine, I think it's a very, very highly anticipated as well as highly in demand product in the market. So to summarize my presentation, I think we are a global leading supplier for EV products. As I said, software will be the dominant driver going forward. So inside your car, there will be millions of lines of code that will be, doing the work when you drive inside any car going forward. And it's very clear, world is embracing electrification. There is no doubt that, we need to step back or do something different, but electrification will be a clear driver for future as well. There are scalable products, as I said, with the e-drives, and it can, based on the different customer needs, it can really suffice all the requirements of a customer. System know-how, very, very important from ICE engines development area, because that becomes very, very handy when you do the EV development going forward. So with this, I think I conclude my presentation. Hope I was on time. Thank you.
Very, very crucial for us from organizing a one-day summit standpoint. Can I request Mr. Chandramouli to please felicitate our guest and request the manufacturing committee as well to join? Mr. Chandramouli is our past president and a champion in manufacturing industry. Thank you. All right, has been a lot of content and a lot of education coming out of this summit for the last few hours. Can we request, anyone in the audience have any question to the speaker so far, whether to Ashim, Dr. Lakshminarayan, or to Mr. Girish? Yeah, please, can we have the mic rolling?
Hi.
Yeah, there's a question.
Girish, excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
my name is Lakshminarayan.
I know.
I used to be.
I was with microphone.
Oh my God. Okay. Girish, very short question. When you made a very full conviction that we are going towards EV, I was very surprised of two things that happened. One, there's the EU norm, which has now been relaxed after 2035 to continue the work to be done on IC engines. I believe large engine manufacturers are putting in billions of dollars in order to continue. That's one. Second thing is Toyota announced it about 3-4 days ago that they're convinced that the future is in hydrogen engines, right? Green hydrogen engines, and they're working on that as well. There is a bit of a confusion overall to come to a predetermined way by which we can get into a fact of what will be the prime driver, right? Whether it will be electric or whether it will be hydrogen. And just to conclude, some time back I had the good fortune of being with Professor John Goodenough, the Nobel Prize laureate who did the lithium-ion cells. He talked about sodium itself being the prime mover for batteries. So in this scenario, and thanks to wonderful work that you guys are doing, what's your overall thinking process, a personal thinking process?
See, when we did our strategy in around 2018, I would say, when we were spinned off from Continental, the first step the management took was to study the market on how the future will look like. And suddenly a message comes from our CCCEO saying from tomorrow onwards, you cannot offer any hydraulic components of IC engines. Very, very surprised, because 80% of our sales coming from there, and message given was don't offer anything on the hydraulics. But we stayed on IC engines supplying electronics. There was no, if you want to go to any customer, we kept on saying we supply electronics but no hydraulics. That day onwards, I think everybody was confused, to be honest, in the company. You can imagine. So, but later on, the studies were presented why we are doing that. And in 2018 end, it was clearly said, end of 21, beginning of 21 and 22 will be the deciding factor for the company, because this is where maximum RFQs will come out across the globe. And when you look back 21 and 22, it happened. And last year when you see, there was an order intake of around 13 billion as a company. Out of 13 billion, 11 billion came from electrification, which clearly states that the electrification is the future. And also this topic, what you just now said, I think we also discussed in the last few months, which is also upcoming, also on blended fuels. These stories are coming up. But when you look at the RFQs today on the electrification, that will not justify, because really what we thought in 2018 is much larger than what is today. When you look back, and today when you go back to the same numbers, the market value has really doubled again for electrification. So with this, I think with the RFQs, what we are working with, the SOPs coming in the next 2 years, it really, stamps, electrification is the future. As I said, for four-wheelers in India, you also know that we are slow, but two-wheelers, I think it has catched up a bit. Hope well. Thank you.
We would request the other audience as well to keep your question reserved and have it answered by the speakers, any of the speakers who have spoken so far just after the next talk. We have Mr. Sudeep Dalvi amongst us. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Communication Officer at Toyota Kirloskar Motors. He'll be speaking on carbon neutrality pathway. Mr. Dalvi comes with wide exposure to manufacturing projects, purchasing, design, global role, quality assurance, external affairs, CSR, and PR. So I'm sure people are looking forward to hear, and Toyota is in the news all around.
So thank you for setting the tone for our presentation today. So I really appreciate that way. This is Sudeep Dalvi, and I'll be talking about the carbon neutrality pathway, and that is what we are looking. And particularly, I'll talking about the automotive sector, which has been today's topic of the, I don't call it as the EV, I'll talk as electrification as a totality. So that would be the perspective. As you know, I think this is what we are talking, my topic is the net zero. I think no need to say, but it's a kind of the balance between the anthropogenic emission by the source and how it can be removed by the carbon sink, and that is something very important to make a net carbon zero. Otherwise, it will be impact to the society and larger perspective, and of course, a lot of the impact on the global warming, etc. It's very important. If you look at the global status of the net zero, I think there are certain few countries have been achieved the net zero, but there are certain countries have put this into their law. Certain country put into the policy document, like India is put under the policy document, and certain things have taken the place. So there are different phases of the commitment on the net carbon zero in the globally, and I think it's a journey that most of the countries have been doing on contributing to the net carbon zero. If you look at the Indian global position in the kind of greenhouse gas emission, and as you may be knowing, we are the third largest total green gas emission, but however, India is a per capita emission are almost the lowest. But that we need not to be happy, because considering the global, and morning Mr. Bali also said about the considering the Indian scenario in terms of industrialization or the economic growth, I think the per capita emission is going to be increased, and we are going to be severe in that. And also, all of you know that the India has been highly susceptible to the climate change, and that's why we need to be a little alert. How are we going forward? And that's the reason there's a clear commitment as India, as a COP22 towards the net zero. India is taking very rapid action, taking net zero. And I think Pancha Amrut principle, everybody knows that, how to make the non-fossil energy to the around 500 gigawatts, 500% of the energy generation for the renewable energy, and the emission to be reduced by 1 billion ton. And of course, they reduce the carbon intensity by 45%. And of course, how we can become the energy independence by 2047. So this is a kind of perspective that's set by the nation. And I think all of you know that India will use all technology, all the fuels to achieve the net zero. It is not one particular technology or the fuel will lead that kind of carbon zero. So that's the point. And if you look at the estimation of the future energy scenario, what is it likely to be, and I'm keeping this as a taking 2047 is a kind of commitment for the energy independence. And if you look at the what kind of transition is going to have for the fuel course choices, of course, it's moving from the biofuel to the biogases, and particularly electrification in terms of hydrogen, etc. That is going to be a journey. Still, renewable energy become the dominant by 30%. Fuel choices will expand, including the clean and the biofuel. But one important point, the petroleum product will still exist in the 2040. So that's very important point. If you look at the particularly automotive sector, the energy demand for the automotive sector will always become double from the current in 2047, and it will take the almost 23% of the percentage of the pie of the total energy. And if you look at the transition of the energy which is required for the automotive sectors, I think the hydrogen, particularly in talking about electric, CNG, gaseous, petrol, so it will remain. So my point of view, though we may go for the alternate energy as a multiple pathway, but still we say that the gasoline or the fossil fuel will still remain in 2047. So what I mean to say, the renewable energy will take the dominant role, but other fuel also exist, and that's going to be scenario which we're looking. So what is that? We need to look at the carbon neutral free society, and that's very important. Is not one alone as a government or the any perspective, but all the stakeholders coming from the government, energy suppliers, industry, customers, and investor, we should look at together towards our effort towards making the carbon-free society, and that is something which we are talking today. If I look at the government, I think they make their pie, and I think morning Ashim also has mentioned about very clearly about the government action, policy, regulations. I think in particularly in automotive sector is more promoting the alternate transport fuel. We know very clear, and though India has not been self-sufficient for particular energy, so it is very clear we will be working on the multi-energy pathway. If you look at in the short term, probably CNG, ethanol, and electrification will already take up, and in the mid to long term, surely the CBG, hydrogen, and methanol is going to be a way forward. And we look at that as a perspective. At the same time, the regulations have become more stringent, and probably whether it is a CAFE or CAFE norms, or the emission in terms of the BS6, BS7 probably is also going to be there for us to look at. The technology should be in line with supporting the environment and also to support the multi-technology in terms of the alternate energy path. If you look at the, I think I need to say, many of you know that the government have been given a very much alternate energy option, and there is a lot of incentive from the supply side to promote more on Make in India concept, whether it is a PLI scheme or it's a kind of green hydrogen mission. And also they are working on the carbon trading mechanism as well as the carbon tax, kind of taxation based on the carbon issue. So there is a lot of things coming from the supply side to promote Make in India. At the same time, at the end customer, how he should be get benefited with the various policy of the FAME document, and morning we talk about that. And not only that, but of course, how the state EV policy also been aligned to both those and the central policy. And this is how the balance between both demand side and supply side in order to make sure that how we can promote the low carbon energy and the product itself. Very important, investors, it's not only the government, the investor and energy suppliers also plays a very important role, because it needs, having the multi-energy power, you need a basic ecosystem to get developed, because just by making policy it won't happen. But if you look at, there's a substantial growth. Last couple of years, there's a lot of progress happened. If you look at all the energy part, whether it is CNG, CBG, ethanol, electricity, and hydrogen, probably if you look at the entire value chain, right from the raw material, production, storage, transportation, and the end application, these are the remarkable progress is happening. Of course, each energy has a different level of ecosystem, but I think the good thing is that it is moving ahead, and that is something we need to recognize. So that's the current system. And if you look at the last, which industry, and which I'm coming from, the Toyota as an automobile industry, what we should think about so that we can really make a part of this kind of pathway for the carbon-free society. It's a very important. We have a technology, not only the carbon reducing technology, certain things which you're talking about, whether it is a hybrid electric vehicle, plug-in hybrid, or electric, is all carbon reducing vehicle. But it doesn't mean that it is truly the sense of the carbon neutral. We have to have a carbon neutral vehicle which also supply the fuel which is more carbon neutral. And that is something very important for us to be sustainability perspective. If you look at, when I say the carbon neutral as a whole story, it is also very important that how we consider from well to well carbon emission. So it is not the end product which give you the tailpipe emission, but it is also very important right from its recovery, its processing, its storage, transportation, how the entire ecosystem backward integration should able to contribute, how it can be a zero carbon neutral. And therefore, we can look at it's a more sustainable carbon mobility, and that's very, very important for us to look at, if at all we need to be a zero carbon, the entire value system has to be looked at in true spirit. And that's what, if you look at in Indian context, and this is, Ashim, this is what the report we understand from NRI particularly. If you look at in today's Indian context of the current system, I think still we have a long way to go. Of course, each technology, whether it is, if I look at the ICE is a one, so where are we today in terms of the E20 ethanol, whether EV or hybrid or CNG? But still we have not been so advantaged towards the carbon. But as we move forward, as we become more using the renewable energy in the backward integration, probably the real carbon footprints can able to get us into the advantage point. So that's very, very important. The well-to-well emission is very important, and we need to improve as a total well-to-well, and that is why something which we really contribute to the true near zero carbon perspective. If you look at the case study of the Brazil, and today, and if you look at in today's scenario in both energy mix condition in the Brazil, I think the FFV SHEV, that is ethanol flexi fuel vehicle, is the lowest carbon kind of CNG emission, and that is why it's very significant that how this technology we should utilize for you to become the net carbon zero, and that's something very, very significant for us to look at the point. And that's why I say that sustainable carbon neutral mobility is most important. In the morning also Mr. Bali was talking about, and Ashim, it's very important is not the end vehicle or end product should be carbon neutral, but also the backward, how can we, both technology and the fuel go together for the making this carbon neutral. And that is something more important for us to look at from the sustainability point of view. Now let me come back to what Toyota thinks today and how we have been moving, keeping this as a perspective. Toyota, we set our vision 2050. This is by our earlier chairman, Mr. Uchiyama. We have set this 2015. We have taken 6 environmental challenges. One is the zero CO2 on the vehicle side, life cycle zero CO2, and of course, the plant which we made the car should be zero CO2. And of course, the 3 principles on the impact on the environment, that is the conservation of the water, and also the recycling society, and of course, how to bring the awareness of society. So very clear milestone which we set ourselves. Today, if you look at all our total electrified models, more than 55 models are electrified models, and almost more than 20 million vehicle has been produced, which has reduced more than 162 tons of carbon dioxide. Today, if you look at the global market share of the electrified vehicles, Toyota has a 43% of the electrified vehicles in the globally. And that's where the vision which we have been leading for the entire worldwide. What is the basic thinking of Toyota is that you must have a kind of technology which support to the region where you make a business. For example, if you look at the Norway, I think we need a wind power. So we should have a technology which support to that product, that energy mix of that country. Japan, if of course is particularly more to the towards the energy security, is more in hydrogen. If you look at the Brazil, is more ethanol rich. So we must have a technology which can work on the FFV. So it's very important that how do you support the region where we make the business, and that's why something important. Similarly, customer is also equally important. It's not that the customer, and the morning also say that how much your usage condition, what is your tonnage condition, depending on the uses, you should able to provide the technology. If I have a small vehicle, less than 100 kilometers, probably EV much bit better. If you are around 200 to 300 per day, probably the hybrid would be much better. And then long term, probably the FC or hydrogen would be better. So you should look at what the customer want and what is for him to be comfortable. That's very important. And that is why Toyota has a technology in all area, whether it is a biofuel, it's electrification, or in case of it's a battery hybrid. So that it makes sure that how can you support the society and how can you support the customer to make sure that he should be a part of the carbon neutral in a totality. It's very important today, and it's not very important. It's not only the giving a technology, but it should be affordable. So Toyota's technology, whether it is a hybrid or plug-in hybrid or battery electric vehicle or the fuel cell vehicle, the major electrified components are common. So you can use any component for any kind of technology. That gives you flexibility. That gives you the scale to make it affordability, and that gives you the a perspective for you to make in a respective region. So that's advantage is very important. That makes your technology is affordable to the end customer, which is most important, and that's the one point. Second point, if you look at, and I explained this history, so far we sold almost 20.3 million electrified cars, and we've been very critical on seeing that how much carbon reduction we've been reduced. So almost 162 million carbon has been reduced from those, particularly the technology per se. Very important, we have, as I told you, we have clear vision of 2050, and we are the basic approach that the thinking way is that all electrified technologies should support the carbon zero action. It's very important. We believe in an orderly transition, not in abstraction, but at the same time, every approach should be technology agnostic, also support to that region and the customer, so that you will have a sustainable growth in taking the way forward towards the carbon neutrality. And that's a vision which kept ourselves 2050 to make sure that zero carbon emission. And we keep milestone on every 5 years to support those vision. And that's way the entire business or the proportion has been spread across. Last but not the least, it's not only important from the technology and the government. The important stakeholders are the customers and all the policy makers. So it's very important that how we should make them in a part of the explanation or awareness is very, very important. So we have been continuously working with the different stakeholders, whether it is bureaucrats, ministers, general people, institute, so that make sure that each and every institute should be a part of this journey, and should make that it should be whatever we look at this should be a sustainable. And once we accept the customer and society, it is easier for us to promote this technology, and thereby they can be a part of this carbon zero as a perspective. And that's why this kind of approach is very, very important, and we look at this as a way forward to lead this kind of thinking way. And that's why, to summarize my it's not only the important one standalone, but it's a cumulative wisdom is very important, that how government, energy supplier, industry, customer, investor today, we should work together to make the carbon-free society. And that's what a takeaway. So let's be part of this journey for all of us together. Thank you very much. That's my explanation. I catch up the time. Yeah.
That gives us more time to engage the audience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I request Mr. T.R. Parshuraman, past president of BCIC, to please felicitate Mr. Sudeep? Can I also request the manufacturing committee to join? Thank you. Mr. Gopi Shankar M is the Vice President and Chief Engineer at Ashok Leyland, and he'll be speaking in New Energy in Commercial Vehicle. An experienced automotive professional with over 25 plus years experience in automobile, new product engineering through the entire life cycle from concept, startup to commercial production and customer connect. Currently, he is leading the new energy and safety transformation at Ashok Leyland. New energy transformation includes development of commercial vehicles powered by natural gas, hydrogen and electric. In safety, integration of ADAS and autonomous features as applicable to commercial vehicles. Can we have you, please?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and very kind of you for a good introduction. So I'm going to talk about new energy in commercial vehicles. You must be wondering what commercial vehicle is doing here, because normally the expectation is this should come last after so many years. But frankly, we ourselves were surprised at the speed at which this is coming up. So the first foremost point is we are in the most exciting period of automobile industry. Just to give you an analogy, means previous speakers have told it, but as an analogy, if you remember telephone, which was invented in 1870s, and up to 1980s, 1990s, it was the same old line with some dials. Suddenly, in 20 years, the whole thing changed. Think everything is done now in the smartphone. Think the same thing is going to happen in automobile industry as well. 1900s, the diesel engine was invented, and now we are going to see the same amount of change in automobile industry. And I would even like to predict that one time you will just vacate your house and stay in one of the buses, which has more facility. So we have been working on emissions for quite a long years. We have done BS2, BS3, BS4, and also BS6. We substantially reduced the amount of emissions, but still that's not enough, because the number of vehicles is going to multiple significantly with our GDP growing 10 times, and we need to stop this. So of course, here comes the new energy vehicles. So commercial vehicles has this unique thing that it can take many energies. So there are basically more energies entering the commercial vehicles in terms of natural gas, hydrogen, and electric. And what we expect to come up in the coming years is we are in the decade of transition. So far, it has been primarily a diesel IC engine with some amount of electric, particularly in the passenger bus, and CNG in few pockets. What we're going to see in the next 5 years, we're already in the process, is coming up of electric buses, CNG, LNG, hydrogen, in terms of fuel cell, hydrogen ICE in a big numbers. And beyond 2030, you can see diesel may still exist much smaller form, but you have a plethora of energies coming to the vehicle. So let me touch upon each of these energy in detail. One slide is not much. So first is the natural gas. We have both the compressor gas as well as a liquefied natural gas. Natural gas is something primarily methane, which is obtained naturally from the fossil fuels. CNG, or typically the pressurized containers, is already in Delhi and few areas. And the LNG, which is a cryogenic base, is going to come into the picture. So there is a huge investment planned in terms of the fuel availability across India. And one of the key points will be the range with liquefied natural gas. You can extend up to 1,500 kilometers. So this is one area on the natural gas that's going to come up. The second is on the hydrogen-based platform. So burning hydrogen in internal combustion engine is a feasible. It has been found feasible now with technology coming up, and that's going to significantly transition into the hydrogen economy. So huge investments are coming up in terms of the hydrogen petrol bunks, which is going to come up in near future. And just to give a few technical points, fuel efficiency is significantly more than the diesel, because hydrogen by itself is more energy density than diesel. And we from Ashok Leyland, we are already running some of the hydrogen ICE vehicles. We actually, as India, many OEMs are leading the world in hydrogen ICE vehicles. So in this case, the hydrogen is burnt in ICE engines. The second area is fuel cell. Of course, I'll not explain the fuel cell, you know this. The hydrogen enters the fuel cell, it gets split into electrons, and that powers the vehicle. So a typical layout of the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. You have fuel cells, different ranges of fuel cells, 80 kilowatts, 100 kilowatts. So it's the kind of fuel cells you can have. Batteries, you can have multiple. Drive motors. Now this is a very important aspect in commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles means it carries load from point A to point B. And so far in diesel engine, we get stuck with the torques because higher torques need much bigger engine. But this is the advantage we get in electric. You get simply the much higher torques with smaller vehicles also. So this is going to increase the range of the vehicles. And of course, you have the power electronics also coming into picture. Fuel cell vehicles are literally twice the efficient than what hydrogen IC vehicles are. So it has its own advantages, and certain areas it performs very well. And then the next is on the EV vehicles. This is a very standard vehicle which we built in our school days. Put a battery, put a motor and drive, so similar. But you need to put a lot of intelligence, like the previous speaker told, on a lot of control data and master controllers so as to control the way it has to run. So typically here you can vary the different kinds of battery capacities, different kinds of drive motors, and the power electronics. So I'm not going to go in detail of each because I think most of this is discussed earlier, so I cut those slides down. But one of the key things that comes here is the vehicle architecture. How are you going to arrange it in the vehicle? So this becomes a very important point to also consider in addition to the fuel, because you need to manage these parts within the vehicle. So here, in BS6, I was a chief engineer for the AVTR platform, and I'm really happy that this is in a modular fashion. A quick update on the modularity is that just like Lego pieces, usually 3 basic pieces, you can build multiple variants, and you apply this principle on the truck, you literally get multiple variants out of the same architecture. So what used to be a tipper tractor haulage separate segment at Ashok Leyland for AVTR, we have already migrated to a modules. And as such, based on the requirement, we are able to combine different aggregates and create the required vehicles. This needs to be extended, what I believe, even for alternate energy, because there are so many combinations of fuels, and if you can't build architecture independently for each fuels. So if you want a CNG vehicles, you should be able to derive it from the basic architecture. Similarly for LNG, similarly for hydrogen ICE. Now we expect at least 80% of the parts to be carried over from diesel vehicles for this. Similarly for fuel cell vehicles as well as the battery vehicles. And you have, unlike passenger and two-wheelers, multiple applications, 4x2, 6x2s, 8x2s. Means you can't manage so many variants if you have one different architecture, different vehicles. So you need to think about the architecture in a big way. So going forward, we think this is how the plan looks like. The medium trucks, I'm more focusing on the medium trucks and heavy trucks. You can see that between 2030 onwards, you will see the vehicles running on the roads in terms of the new energy. Next, talking about some of the key challenges. There are some key challenges on the design aspect. The 4 major are the safety management, thermal, efficiency management, application management. The first is safety management. Diesel versus BEV, your efficiency almost to the safety management. Safety management is well known. We need to manage the safety, whether it's a battery, whether it's handling the hydrogen. This whole system has to be updated. It's not just the vehicle safety, but it's including the storage, the transportation, the whole cycle of the handling of the system has to be updated from the safety point of view. So, and also within the vehicle, while people talk about battery, even the high voltage lines needs the same care as you give for a battery or the hydrogen. So this is where we need to bring in more standards, not just from the regulation, but even within the OEMs. New standards has to be developed in terms of design, in terms of validation, and also in terms of, finally taking it back as part of the recycling. The next very important is the thermal management, because the vehicle you are seeing a lot more systems coming in, power electronics, the fuel cells, the batteries, and you need to find innovative ways of managing the thermal of these. See, typically our diesel engine were at high thermal, and it was easy because a simple formula, the delta T decides how quickly you can transfer the heat. But unfortunately, in all these power electronics are little lower temperature, and India is at a higher temperature. So the delta is actually less, which means you need a more innovative, otherwise your whole vehicle will be full of radiators. So you need to find innovative ways of handling the thermal. The next aspect is the efficiency management. This is the most important thing. For example, does the moon require energy to go around the earth? The answer is no. It just keeps moving. If I need to move from Chennai to Bangalore, literally I should accelerate 0 to 80 kmph in 20 seconds and leave it. The vehicle should reach Bangalore. Bangalore, I should decelerate and enter Bangalore. That should be so simple. But the entire energy is used in between. Why? To accelerate, to decelerate. You have and this is where the EV plays a very big role. Because when you decelerate, you can absorb that energy back, and when you accelerate, you can send back the same energy. This is a big area. So the movement to EV or hydrogen from commercial vehicle or automotive point is not only for environmental. You can find innovative way of conserving the energy and hence have a better energy usage in the vehicle. So a lot of technologies are going to come up in efficiency improvement. It can be lightweighting, it can be energy regeneration, it can be lower drag into air of tires. So this is a very big, each of these slides are very big subject, but just touching the topics for you. The next is the application management. This is another big area in commercial vehicles because the vehicles may carry milk, can carry petroleum products, can carry sand or whatever it is. And each of these will have a different applications, a different fuel, and how do you handle it all through the entire cycle. And we find even in certain, we don't have time to go into detail of this, but we see that each of these has TCO cost per ton per kilometer. We are seeing certain application, even today it is better than diesel. I think that's where this whole thing is coming up. Coming to the last set of slides, the key pillars. OEMs is one part of the puzzle, as it was mentioned many times earlier. The first is technology and manufacturing. Not just the TCOs, but key things like driver skill updation. This may look small, but it has to be significantly improved to handle battery vehicle and hydrogen vehicle as well as the fuel cell vehicles. Just now we made the drivers as a chemistry PhD. We made him doctorate chemistry BSc. Now we have to make an electric PhD in the fuel cell vehicle. The second major is the energy infrastructure. This is fundamental. Without fuel, you can't do anything. So whether it is hydrogen infrastructure, or you want the battery infrastructure, or it can be ethanol, wherever it is, that infrastructure has to be in place. What we believe, there will be pockets of such energy infrastructure available in certain places, and you will expect these vehicles to run more in those places. Energy cost is a very important factor. More than sustainability, sustenance is what everybody has indicated very clearly. If energy cost is not going to come down, there is no way the vehicle will move towards it. We had the CNG issue very recently, where when the CNG cost went up, the CNG sales got completely lost. And we have some good news came up recently. The next important point is the finance and business models. Very clearly, these vehicles are high, initial costs are significantly high, but the payback is also very good. So we need a new finance and business models to handle this high initial cost. And there are certain key points as well, which are significant from customer point of view. For example, resale of the vehicle. How do you handle insurance? How do you handle carbon credits? These are the other points which also needs to be considered in detail. Last but not the least is the government policy. The zero emission zones, the subsidies, the incentives are definitely will be required at least to give the initial start. And of course, after it, the economy will pick up by itself. So with that, I come to the conclusion. I went a little fast from time perspective. So the summary point is all the energy is going to come into commercial vehicles. You have all the way from hydrogen to natural gas to diesel to electric. And I believe all of them is going to be in parallel in the industry. And based on the TCO, based on the availability, you will have pockets of these different fuels or energy are running in parallel in different zones in India. So thank you again.
So Mr. Jairaj, to please felicitate our guest. Also request the manufacturing committee to come back.
very much.
Now I invite Mr. Rahul Mathur, Deputy General Manager at E-Connectivity, for a short presentation. Rahul is based out of Bangalore and has over 25 years of experience in the aerospace, defense, space and telecom centers. He has led multiple leadership roles in multinationals such as E-Connectivity, Deutsche, and Indian companies such as Bharti Telecom. Can we have you, Rahul?
Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like I'm the last speaker before lunch, so maybe I'll do it a little bit differently. I won't have any slides today. I'll give a short introduction about T-Connectivity, and then we'll run through 3 short videos. Hope that this format will keep you ready for lunch. T-Connectivity is a 16 billion, 75-year-old industry technology company. Our purpose is to create a safer, sustainable, and connected future. We have 140 locations that we are based out of, in about 80,000 employees, out of which about 20,000 engineers, and I'm happy to say that we have about 2,000 of them based out of Bangalore, and it's going to be one of the largest centers that we have globally. T-Connectivity provides deep tech solutions in sensing, connecting, switching, and antenna systems. Due to our working in multiple locations and countries, we work very closely with all global OEMs, tier 1s and tier 2s. So that way, in India as well, they have teams that are doing that, and our teams can work very closely with any of the engineering teams that you have to be able to provide, right from prototype or design stage to testing solutions, right? So with that, I just hope that technology works for us and we can see a few videos. Yeah.
When technology connects, so does humanity. No matter how small it begins, every connection has the power to engineer something bigger, to imagine a better world, and bring us together to make it happen. Beyond creating a safer, sustainable, more productive world, TE Connectivity is engineering possibility, engineering hope, engineering the future. We're committed to unleashing the potential of every connection. Connections that bring proven technology to every corner of the Earth. Connections that empower collaboration in engineering. And connections that move humanity forward. Because any connection can change the world. Every connection counts.
Yeah, we are. We're a US-based company. Thank you. Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll see the other video and then we can. Thank you. Yeah. To answer your question, the question was in India, right? So we've been in India since 1994. We have a couple of manufacturing locations. One is in Bangalore and the other is in Pune. We have two sites. The Pune sites are the ones that are focused on automotive and transportation. And yeah, we are working with most of the with most of the Indian OEMs as well, and some of the startups in terms of the EV infrastructure, as well as on the vehicle products. So yeah, there is a lot of excitement about the future. It's going to be, I think today it's rolling out in the two-wheeler space, as soon to be hopefully in the three-wheeler, but it'll take a little bit of time on the four-wheelers to come up. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for supporting BCIC. Can I request Mr. G.V. Rao to please felicitate Rahul? Mr. G.V. Rao is the Director CSR at Volvo and also the Chairperson of CSR Expert Committee. Can I also request the Manufacturing Committee to please join? Thank you. Today we have amongst us Dr. Sridhar Mitta. Dr. Sridhar Mitta's 50 years of professional experience in IT industry can be summarized in 3 words: technology, business, and entrepreneurship. Dr. Mitta spearheaded R&D in the IT industry to design unique mini-computer systems that are suitable for Indian market by using microprocessor technologies. He developed in the process a team of professionals who have contributed extensively to the R&D globally across leadership roles. Later, he pioneered product development services from India to globe technology leaders. Dr. Mita was able to blend his R&D skills with business acumen to come up with products and services that met industry needs and at the same time were commercially viable. Dr. Mita is currently the founder of Next Wealth Entrepreneurs, Bangalore. Next Wealth is a unique IT company that helps its global clients to gain insights from their data by blending human touch with digital technologies. Next Wealth is setting up multiple delivery centers in small towns along with entrepreneurs. This has resulted in increased employment for graduates, particularly girls. Dr. Mita was also founder of E4E in India that supported budding entrepreneurs from India to get access to famed Silicon Valley infrastructure in the US. Dr. Mita was the first employee of Wipro's IT business and spearheaded its growth into many businesses as CTO for 20 years from 1980. He founded nThink Inc. in Santa Clara, US to monetize semiconductor IPs developed at Wipro. BCIC wanted to recognize Dr. Mita's experience for his mentorship and management of R&D in the IT industry. So can you have you on stage? Can I request the office bearers, Dr. Ravindran, Dr. Devarajan, Mr. Jairaj, the past president, Mr. Parshuraman, Mr. Lakshminarayan, to please come and felicitate Dr. Mita. You can give it and then you can, now that you all are here.
Fantastic. Sir, great honors.
No. A big round of applause, please. His contribution to the industry is unmatched. Sir, can I request you to speak for 2 minutes?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank BCIC and the organizing committee to do this honor for me. And I won't take much time before lunch. See, basically, I've been an electronics engineer for the last 50 years and worked in computers, IT, hardware, software, digital transformation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. But recently one thing happened. Dr. Moore, who invented the Moore's law, which drove electronics for the last 75 years, died. He was very famous for predicting a law which said that every 18 months, the number of transistors in a piece of silicon will double, which means the performance will go twice, the cost will come down half, and the size will come down half. And it was expected that it will last for maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. It lasted 50 years. And at that time, the general joke was, if automobile industry has done in the same way, the automobiles will be running at maybe 10,000 kilometers per liter and these kind of things. Then somebody said, the car will also be so much. So, because size will also come down. But today, after listening to some of the lectures here, I should confess, the automobile industry is running on a Moore's law today. Congratulations to all the people here who are in that industry. And the amount of changes which are taking place is just amazing me. See, recently we had worry seeing that the IT industry, especially in artificial intelligence, is moving too fast to be good with the ChatGPT and other things coming. But at least I know now that automobile industry is taking care of many of those unexpected problems or unforeseen problems. And I congratulate once again this industry here. Thank you.